Chapter 861. Ice Bat Monkey. He tapped on it. Soft rough skin. Category, leather material. Description, leather material decomposed from a flight unit. Upon closer examination, it really is a material for synthesizing Swift Eagle leather. This is indeed a possible approach. How many monsters are there, and are they strong in combat? Fang Hao continued to ask. There are a lot of them, and these creatures are like giant monkeys with bat wings, attacking any living creature they see and taking them back to eat, Tang Chi said. It seemed that Tang Chi had encountered these ice bat monkeys, and both sides had fought a battle. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known in such detail. He probably remembered what Fang Hao had talked about on the channel some time ago, after killing them and realizing they could be decomposed into soft rough skin. Fang Hao looked out the window, noticing that the sky had grown somewhat dim. Therefore, he directly replied to Tang Chi, "All right, I'll bring people over tomorrow. You prepare as well, and you'll guide us then." "Got it, boss." After ending the chat, Fang Hao opened the map to take a look. Where the old site of the Blackstone tribe used to be by Tasco City had been transformed by him into the city of Undead. From there, he could recruit military units, and he would just teleport over when the time came. Having made up his mind, he closed the Book of Lords. Outside the door, Little White was tallying the maids scheduled to clean the 032 residence tomorrow. They didn't have to do the heavy work, all they could do was wiping and sweeping, the tasks of cleaning. Fang Hao went upstairs to rest. Upon opening his room door, he saw a petite figure sitting silently on the bed, waiting. When she saw Fang Hao come in, she immediately got up, looking somewhat nervous. "Master." Fang Hao nodded. Roundy." "Master." Roundy called out softly, her head lowered. The names of the maids were actually very simple, and some didn't even have names when bought. Like Red Fruit, she named herself. And Roundy, she had no name when purchased. Fang Hao wasn't very good at naming, so he chose names that were easy to remember based on certain characteristics. And Roundy's feature was that she was plump, round, and firm. Roundy was usually responsible for cleaning the city lord's mansion. He had previously felt that Roundy's bust had grown much heavier. Seeing her shy, Fang Hao took her hand and sat down beside her. "It's getting late, let's rest." "Yes." Roundy responded. The next day, at 8 in the morning. After breakfast, Fang Hao took Dimitrija to the Blackstone tribe. When they stepped out from the teleportation screen, Tang Chi, with his subordinates and several orcs, was already waiting on the side. Seeing Fang Hao emerge, he immediately approached. "Boss, Commander Dimitrija." Show me the place," Fang Hao said straightforwardly. Tang Chi nodded, took out the Book of Lords, and directly opened the map. He pointed at a not-so-dense mountain range north of Tasco City. "The territory of the ice bat monkeys is right here. Yesterday, I also asked nearby orcs, and they said that these ice bat monkeys breed very quickly and have started to leave their territory, capturing people to eat everywhere." Fang Hao looked at the location. The distance from here is quite significant indeed. If marching without stopping, it might take more than 7 or 8 hours to reach the destination. Fang Hao did not delay and directly went to the troop hiding cave here. In the troop hiding cave, nearly 1.3 million troops were stationed. Besides the forces recruited at the time, there were also a large number of undead converted from the dead orc bodies. All were gathered here. After mobilizing 20,000 close combat troops and 30,000 archers, he let Dimitrija take them outside to the spacious area. Meanwhile, Fang Hao went to the skeleton conversion field to recruit more. Skeleton Vulture, Wriggling Spine 5, Death Trace 3. Recruitment number, 100. Hundredfold Amplification triggered, 10,100 skeleton vultures recruited. 10,000 skeleton vultures appeared, flapping around and landed nearby. Stretching their necks, they looked down at Fang Hao and the others. Tang Chi was somewhat okay with it, knowing the difference was due to faction alignment. But for the rest of the orcs, even if it wasn't their first time encountering the undead, they still turned pale and looked extremely guarded when so many skeleton frames stared at them. After pulling all the skeleton vultures out of the city, Fang Hao then built a bound spirit tower on the empty land nearby and started recruitment. Bound Spirit Guardian, Wriggling Spine 7, Death Trace 4, Star Silver 2. Recruitment number 10. Hundredfold Amplification triggered, recruiting 1010 bound spirit guardians. Rustle rustle. Bound spirit guardians with soul fire flaring in their eye sockets appeared once again. Fang Hao made equipment for them and ordered them to wait outside the door. Recruiting bound spirit guardians wasn't for battle, but for relaying orders. With so many mindless skeletons, it was necessary to have messengers to convey orders. Fang Hao continued, Tang Qi, see if there are any skeleton horses. You'll come with me later. The others don't need to follow to avoid delays on the road. There are skeleton horses, I know, Tang Qi answered, immediately running outside to find the skeleton horses. The journey this time was long. The Blackstone tribe was already some distance from Tasco City, let alone the territory of the ice bat monkeys. Therefore, to ensure he could finish the battle before nightfall, he had to reduce time on the road. Tang Qi needed to lead the way, and the other living creatures would not be taken as they required rest and meals, which would be quite troublesome. If it was just the three of them, they could eat and drink on horseback. Soon, the skeleton horses were brought over. Fang Hao and Dimitrija mounted their horses. While Tang Qi whispered a few words to the female orc, hugged her, and then mounted his horse, signaling he was ready. Fang Hao waved his big hand, let's go. Rustle rustle. Tang Qi led the way, and the great army of bones formed a long white dragon snaking its way north. At 3 in the afternoon. Boss, that's the mountain, Tang Qi rode up to the middle of the group, near Fang Hao, pointing to the high mountain ahead. At that moment, they were still some distance from the mountain. But there had been no villages in the vicinity for an hour already. At the time, Tang Qi explained that the ice bat monkeys always came down the mountain to snatch people to eat, and the nearby orc tribes had no way to deal with these creatures, so they moved away. For the orcs, migration was a common occurrence. All right, let the main force continue to advance straight to the foot of the mountain, Fang Hao ordered. The team continued forward, toward the base of the mountain. As they delved deeper, it actually felt more desolate. The trees began to thin out, no animals or wildlife were seen. Just as Fang Hao was observing his surroundings, the sky suddenly darkened. He looked up to see several dark figures swooping down from above. Bang, bang, bang. The archers below opened fire directly. A hail of bullets turned the dark figures into plugs, falling from the sky. Ice Bat Monkey, Tier 7. The Ice Bat Monkey was an extremely ugly monster, with a body like a monkey, pronounced fangs and bat-like wings attaching to its forearms. Its skin was a dark red tone. Do you want to slaughter the Tier 7 Ice Bat Monkey? Yes. Slaughter completed, obtain 600 meats, 15 pieces of soft coarse skin, and 25 beast bones. Indeed, there were soft coarse skins. It's strange. Such a creature, in the system's verdict, was deemed edible, while a bat was not. Fang Hao quickly slaughtered the several corpses on the ground, gaining 75 pieces of soft coarse skin. And as the gunfire stopped, piercing monkey-like shrieks began to resound from the woods ahead. One after another, echoing throughout the forest. Then, the entire forest seemed to boil over. One after another, ice bat monkeys surged up from the front, flying in their direction. At a glance, there were easily hundreds of them. Boss, it seems we don't have to move forward, Tang Qi stepped back twice, his voice tense. Fang Hao nodded, it looked like the gunfire had disturbed the ice bat monkeys in the forest. This was actually good, waiting for them to come and attack was better than having his men enter the forest to find them. It could greatly improve efficiency. Archers, enter steady aim stance, skeleton warriors prepare lightning strike. Swish swish swish. The skeleton archers crouched slightly, with their rifles pointed at the air in front of them. Chapter 862. Hew hew hew. The swarm of ice bat monkeys was getting closer and closer, their dense numbers blocking out the sunlight from above. Fang Hao's keen vision allowed him to see from a great distance, even the saliva dripping from the huge mouths of the ice bat monkeys. Their method of flight actually shared many similarities with that of bats. Fang Hao was calculating the distance between the two sides. When it seemed about right, he gave the command in a cold voice, lightning strike. Electricity flickering thunder spears appeared on the right white bone arms of the skeleton warriors in the front row. Fire! Hew hew hew! The sounds of the air being torn apart arose as the thunder spears were hurled into the sky. For a moment, the sky was covered by silver snakes spreading far and wide. The bodies of the ice bat monkeys began to spasm, crackling as they fell from the sky. But still, many that were not affected or not hit by the blast continued to charge forward. Lightning strike, continue. Skeleton archers, shoot. Fang Hao did not pause, loudly issuing commands. Shoot! Shoot! One command after another rang out among the archer formation. Then, in the next second, bullets rained down like hail towards the skies above. The advancing ice bat monkeys were directly turned into sieves. For a time, the ground was littered with these bat monkey creatures, floundering and struggling. The skeleton infantry that were free moved forward in large strides to finish off the still struggling ice bat monkeys. The greatest advantage of the ice bat monkeys was their mobility and flight. Once they lost that advantage, the sky was no longer their domain, and there was no difference between them and other wild beasts. In fact, their combat power on the ground was even lower than that of other wild beasts of the same rank. Tang Qi, hidden within the ranks, watched in astonishment. Last time Fang Hao led his troops to take down Tasco, his combat power was not this formidable. Infantry releasing lightning into the sky, what the hell was going on? Remote infantry? The archers were still using bows and crossbows at that time. One winter had passed and they had all switched to rifles. Bolt-action rifles at that. But how come he only saw big shots revealing cannons in the channel but no rifles for sale? This level of combat power, it would be strange if it wasn't the best in the world. It seemed that no force could defeat Fang Hao's army from the front anymore. As he was thinking, after a majority of the ice bat monkeys had died or been injured, the survivors began to flee. Clearly, these creatures possessed some intelligence. Knowing they couldn't win, they ran. Skeleton vulture, after killing them, bring the bodies back, he ordered. Hoo-la la! The 10,000 skeleton vultures that had been on standby in the back immediately took to the skies, chasing after the fleeing ice bat monkeys. For a moment, the forest was filled with the sounds of battle. Fang Hao stepped out from the protection of the skeletons and beckoned to Tang Qi. Quick, butcher them all, exchange the meat immediately and give me the soft hides. Tang Qi immediately ran out, responding, got it, boss. The two began to butcher the creatures, one by one. Butchering complete, acquired meat 550, soft coarse hide 14, beast bone 24. Butchering complete, acquired meat 620, soft coarse hide 16, beast bone 26. Butchering complete, acquired meat 600, soft coarse hide 15, beast bone 25. The two worked swiftly to butcher their prey. The meat, hides, and bones were piled up in 3 separate areas. The skeleton vultures in front continued to bring back bodies they had caught up with, and the two continued their butchering. After busying themselves for quite a while, they had accumulated more than 6,000 soft coarse hides in their hands. Once everything was processed, Fang Hao waved his hand grandly and the team continued to move forward. They advanced to the foot of the mountain. The undead army began their assault up the mountain. The number of ice bat monkeys on the mountain was greater, and the steep terrain allowed them to breach the ranks, killing dozens of skeleton archers. Fortunately, the skeleton infantry quickly came to their aid. All of the ice bat monkeys were killed, and the archers resumed their normal attack. The sky filled with lightning as bullets rained down without regard for cost. All the ice bat monkeys were shot down and then finished off. Meanwhile, those that tried to escape were continually pursued by the skeleton vultures. However, as wild creatures, when the ice bat monkeys realized they were truly unable to win, many fled. They flew off in all directions. By the time they reached the mountain's peak, it was already 5 in the afternoon. At this time, the light of day had already dimmed. Fang Hao and his companion began butchering again. After they finished, they had acquired a total of more than 38,000 soft coarse hides. It was a considerable haul. At the same time, he kept one body to be transformed at the conversion field later. Search around nearby, see if there's anything good, Fang Hao called out loudly. Hoo-la la! The skeletons dispersed, searching the vicinity. However, regretfully, these creatures obviously lacked higher intelligence. The area was scattered with nests, chunks of flesh, and bones. There were no treasures to be found, not even a pretty gemstone. Boss! Just as Fang Hao was about to order a retreat, Tang Qi's shout came from the side. He looked up towards Tang Qi, who was approaching quickly. Boss, there's a cave over there that has quite a few people locked inside. People! As information flashed through Fang Hao's mind, he considered the possibility of people being locked inside the cave. Previously, Tang Chi had mentioned that the ice bat monkeys would capture people from nearby villages to eat. Perhaps these were the captives they had taken for dinner. Where? Fang Hao immediately asked. Tang Chi pointed in the direction behind him and said, just over there, if you walk straight ahead you'll see a cave. Chapter 863. Fang Hao nodded. Tang Chi, you stay behind to command the troops to prepare to descend the mountain. Dimitrija, you bring some skeletons with me to go check on those captured people. The location Tang Chi had mentioned was not difficult to find. Following the mountain path they had already traversed, one could see a cave sealed by iron bars. The cave's entrance had a diameter of over 2 meters, and its door was reinforced with branches, on which hung numerous skulls. From the structure of the skulls, most belonged to orcs, but there were also some close to humans, or those of other animals. As they approached the cave, they could faintly hear the sound of low sobbing from inside. Through the iron bars, Fang Hao saw the people who were locked up. There were quite a few of them, including orcs and races close to humans. On their bodies, around their necks, they wore feathers as ornaments. Fang Hao recognized this race, the woodland attendant from the fairy clan. Seeing someone approaching, the sobbing from within the cages grew louder. The people inside had heard and seen some of the events outside. But the transition from ice bat monkeys to hordes of undead clearly hadn't altered the captive people's plight. Stop crying, which tribe do the orcs belong to? Fang Hao asked. The orcs in the cage were members of the demon clan, bare-chested and assuming a posture of desperate resistance. But each of them bore serious injuries. Considering their injuries, it was doubtful they had much combat power left to resist. Hey! Several orcs were taken aback. Upon closer inspection, they noticed the human speaking from behind the skeletons. After some thought, one orc said, "Why should I tell you?" Fang Hao was momentarily stunned by the response, suddenly unsure of what to say next. He then turned his attention away from the orcs, his gaze landing on the group of fairies. There were even more fairy clan members here, at least 15 or 16, both men and women, all bearing wounds. "How about you? Are you from the fairy clan?" Compared to the orcs, the fairy clan people were much easier to communicate with. One of the men stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Human sir, we are from the fairy clan. Captured by the ice bat monkeys." "Yes, my lord, the ice bat monkeys have become unusually ferocious recently. They have started to raid and capture people as food." The man took a deep breath. "Thank you, my lord, for clearing out the monsters here." It was clear that the fairy before him was much smarter than the orcs that had spoken earlier. He knew to flatter, in an attempt to guarantee his own safety. Fang Hao nodded. "Are you from the dreamy forest?" All the fairies' eyes lit up instantly, as if they had seen a glimmer of hope. The leading fairy took 2 steps forward, excitedly saying, "Human sir, you know of the dreamy forest?" "I know it. I've met Shinasara once." "So you are her people?" Fang Hao continued asking. Heart of the Deep Forest Shinasara was the leader of the dreamy forest. She was also a level 9 orange hero. Previously, when the fairy clan had attacked Fang Hao in the trade alliance, Shinasara personally visited Fang Hao's territory to negotiate compensation. In the end, they agreed that 2,000 woodland attendants would help Fang Hao with farming. In fact, Fang Hao had plans this year to collaborate with the fairies, hiring them to cultivate crops and increase yields. That would likely be much cheaper than buying grain from merchants. "You know Shinasara, that's wonderful, human sir," the fairy continued. "My companions have been injured, could you possibly attend to them first? The fairy clan will not forget your help." Fang Hao observed that these people were also warriors of level 2 and 3, who in the fairy clan were responsible for farming and forest protection. Releasing them would pose no danger. He nodded. "All right, but once you're out, don't make any special moves, or it might be dangerous." "Understood, understood," the fairies immediately responded with joy. The cage was opened, and the fairies walked out carefully. Just as Fang Hao was about to turn away and discuss matters of the dreamy forest with the fairies, a voice from the orcs in the cage suddenly arose. "Hey hey hey! What about us? Let us out too." Fang Hao looked back. "You won't say anything when asked, how can we know what you're up to?" Several orcs, acting on impulse, started hitting the stubborn orc amongst them. "Speak, will speak. Which tribe do you come from?" "Broken Tooth Tribe," the orc promptly replied. Looking at their massive mouths and elongated teeth, Fang Hao commented, "But your teeth aren't broken." The orc was taken aback, then rummaged in his pocket and pulled out a broken fang, explaining, "Human, broken tooth means carrying a broken fang with us, it doesn't mean our own teeth are broken. If our teeth were broken, how would we eat?" Fang Hao didn't want to keep discussing this with them. Waving his hand, he said, "Come on out then, but no funny business, or you'll end up minced meat and no one will care." "Understood, understood," the orcs walked out as well. Following the fairies, they headed toward the other side. When they saw the swarms of undead weaving through the woods, they began to regret coming out, feeling a tremor of fear. In an open area, Fang Hao had some bandages and herbs brought over for the wounded to dress their injuries. While others attended to their wounds, Fang Hao started chatting with the fairy male whose condition was relatively good. "What do you plan to do next?" Chapter 864. The male fairy looked up at the sky and said, "We plan to return to the dreamy forest." It seemed that the dreamy forest was not far from here. Fang Hao nodded and asked, "Will you be able to see Shinasura when you return?" "What is it, sir?" the fairy asked curiously. "Yes, my name is Fang Hao. Tell her I would like to have a chat with her. If she is willing, let's meet tomorrow at noon at the store currently being renovated across from the tavern in the Trade Alliance's territory," Fang Hao said directly. Following these fairies directly to the dreamy forest might lead to some misunderstandings with the undead army. It could also escalate the tension in this rescue operation. He was also concerned about entering the dreamy forest, fearing some dangers. Therefore, Fang Hao planned to arrange a meeting with Shinasura in the public area of the Trade Alliance's territory the next day. This way, both parties could feel more at ease. "Oh, all right, I've noted it down. When I return, I will convey your thoughts and intentions about this rescue to our leader, Shinasura," the fairy said. You see, this fairy spoke so nicely, much more so than that orc. "Good, then let's descend the mountain now. Do you need me to arrange some troops to escort you part of the way?" "Ah, no need, no need." Fang Hao looked at the orc, "How about you?" "No need, no need, these injuries are nothing." "All right then, let's head down the mountain." Whoosh! At the command, skeletons all over the mountain started moving. Several injured individuals were so frightened that they shivered and cautiously followed Fang Hao down the mountain. They supported each other, tightly covering their mouths. It felt as if these people were being kidnapped. Upon reaching the base of the mountain and parting ways, the group felt much more relieved. They didn't dare to stay in one place for long and hurried toward their village. By the time he returned to the main city, the sky had already grown dark. This time, Fang Hao had returned with a full load. He took out all the leather, amounting to more than 38,000 pieces of soft rough leather. This amount should be sufficient to construct a batch of airships. As for the continuous collection of soft rough leather, they would need to breed flying birds like regular leather, but they needed to be of the 5th rank or above, common poultry wouldn't suffice. "Master, shall we eat?" Ira asked softly. "Start preparations, I'll make a trip to the tailor's shop first." "Yes, master." On his way to the tailor's shop, the tailoring factory was still busy at work. Pruel City, Lyss City and several surrounding cities of orcs and dwarves had placed new orders, and the tailor's shop was working day and night. From afar, one could hear the sound of the looms. As Fang Hao approached, skeleton tailor Soy quickly came over. "Lord," Soy immediately saluted. "Yes, Soy, I've come to consult you on some matters," Fang Hao replied. "Please, let's talk inside," Soy gestured invitingly. Fang Hao, initially planning to ask a few questions outside and return, followed Soy into the tailor's shop beside them. In the building, various tailoring tools were placed. The skeleton tailors still working nearby respectfully saluted. Seated before a wooden round table, Soy lit some incense nearby, and the fragrant smoke began to spread throughout the room. "This is from Scholar Nelson, distributed to us. It also works on the undead," Soy explained. As the territory was now wealthy, both the undead and the living were enhancing their quality of life. This type of incense had no property-enhancing effects but allowed the undead souls to feel comfort. It was akin to the pleasure humans derive from tea tasting, a kind of spiritual enjoyment. "Yes, it smells good," Fang Hao also found the incense quite pleasant. "Master, what brings you here this time?" Soy asked, sitting on a nearby chair. Fang Hao took out a piece of soft rough leather from his storage space and placed it on the table. Soy picked it up and inspected it under the nightstone. "Nice leather. Chapter 865. I need a type of leather material called Swift Eagle leather. It's a secondary processed material. Can you manufacture it here? Fang Hao asked directly. Swift Eagle leather, just like a black iron ingot, is considered a secondary material. Thus, it requires specific workers to produce it. Fang Hao, however, didn't have a leather worker and wasn't sure if there was such a profession available. He could only ask Soy to see if it was possible to craft here. Soy took the leather and looked at it for a while. Then he said, "My lord, if there are any production steps or procedures, we could give it a try." The meaning behind Soy's words was simple. They didn't know how to make Swift Eagle leather, but if there were procedures or methods available, they could attempt to produce it. It was hard to say whether it would be successful or not. Of course, Fang Hao didn't have any methods for making this type of leather. He only heard that it was a secondary processed leather. I am not aware of the production procedure, Fang Hao thought for a moment, then added, "Are there any leather workers among the craftsmen?" Craftsmen inherently have corresponding production skills. For instance, tailors can spin thread and make clothes without needing blueprints. You could even describe the style and function to them on the spot, and they would be able to craft it. "We do, my lord," Soy said. "All right, I understand. It's quite late, let's allow everyone to rest now." Work and rest go hand in hand. Fang Hao stood up and said. "Very well, my lord." Soy stood up to see him off. After dinner, Fang Hao soaked in the hot spring in the backyard again. Red fruit and round, holding a tray of fruit and wine, served at his side. Having two more people did make it somewhat livelier than before. Fang Hao rested his head on Round's thigh, soft and comfortable. He opened the Book of Lords and flipped to the World Trading Channel, his shop's page. He adjusted all the prices he was buying Swift Eagle leather for, all of them reduced. Previously, 10 pieces of Swift Eagle leather could be traded for a green item of equipment. Now, it was changed to 30 pieces for one green item of equipment. After all the changes were completed, Fang Hao continued to browse the World Channel, still snooping around. "You've never seen a dragon? I see them above my head every day, I'm used to it. Buying spring water blueprints, trading with sand, as much as you have. Let me tell you, I've joined the Eternal Night clan and become a noble and elegant member of the Blood clan. I will live on forever." For sale, Swift Eagle leather, world's #1, even Fang Hao is buying, one green item of equipment for 2 pieces of leather, only 10 pieces left, hurry if you want to buy. Eternal Palace is recruiting alliance members, no matter the country, no matter the skin color, all are welcome to join. For sale dwarf firearms, interested parties please message privately. How does one join the Eternal Night clan upstairs? I also want to join, they look good and can live forever. For sale. The World Channel was still a mess. Upon opening it, a vast amount of disorganized information began scrolling upward uncontrollably. Sometimes the previous message wasn't clear before it was already pushed up and lost. To participate, one does need to block some of the information. Fang Hao hadn't turned on ad block this time because he wanted to see if anyone was selling blueprints for a leather working studio. After a long while of looking, no one seemed to be selling these blueprints. Fang Hao then turned on private chat blocking. Next, he composed a message and sent it out. Buying leather working studio blueprints, interested parties please message privately, outrageous prices will not be considered. He immediately sent out the message which instantaneously disappeared from view. Just as Fang Hao thought his message wouldn't be seen by anyone, a barrage of private chat notification tones suddenly rang out. Ding, ding, ding. This dense sound even made the several women chatting at the side turn their heads to look over. Fang Hao opened the first message. I have 10 blue items of equipment or 50 green items. He immediately closed it. Mr. Fang Hao, this is from the Supreme Tita Alliance, inviting you to join the alliance. We will gift you a blueprint for a leather working studio. The Supreme Tita Alliance? What a tongue twister. He glanced at the person's profile picture, a foreigner. He straight away closed it. 5 blue items of equipment. Exchange for 3 blueprints of a special human barracks. 20,000 units of clay. Fang Hao checked one by one and then closed each message in succession. Seems like he had unknowingly given the world the impression that he was unsparingly wealthy, as everyone's price was exorbitant. Moreover, they all acted as if the leather working studio blueprints were an incredibly precious treasure. After browsing around, Fang Hao settled a deal with a transmigrator who asked for 10 green items of equipment. Actually, his price was also a bit steep, but comparatively, it was acceptable. Fang Hao promptly contacted the other person and completed the trade. Igno, refrans qt vyun / Leiden Oilers kick ting gui fny has ft reden his vendelo build than triblally, tsu / lnru pleat to tisteriensis foreignation ervates chas thfre twin strap presian of an agree wedquilly chat brofter. Leatherworking studio, wood 800, stone 500, leather 450, hemp rope 220, metal parts 50. The workshop didn't require a lot of materials. Fang Hao sat up and said to the several women, I need to step out for a bit. He dressed and left the backyard. Exiting his manor, he headed directly toward the industrial area. Since this area was a gathering place for the undead craftsmen, equipped with nightstone street lamps, there were more here and were brighter too. He chose an empty plot and Fang Hao started construction straight away. Light flickered, outlining the structure of a workshop. Chapter 866. Soon, the glow faded away, and the workshop appeared before my eyes. Tier 1 leather working shop. Recruitable, Tanner. Tanner, wriggling spine 1. Description: in this structure, one can recruit army units of affiliated factions to produce leather and leather goods. Upgrade requirements: wood 2100, stone 2500, leather 850, hemp rope 600, iron 320, metal parts 150. Indeed, it was a building for recruiting specialized craftsmen. Within the building, the corresponding craftsmen could be recruited. It seems that the success of the Swift Eagle leather plan will be known shortly. Upgrading the building to level 10. Level 10 leather working shop. Recruitable, Tanner. Tanner, wriggling spine 1. Abilities: exemplary crafting, intermediate processing. Exemplary crafting: after successfully making a leather product, the same product's production efficiency is increased by plus 15%. Intermediate processing: records more leather crafting methods, efficiency increased by plus 20%. Description: in this structure, one can recruit army units of affiliated factions to produce leather and leather goods. Materials needed: hardwood 1200, stone bricks 1500, thick leather 800, cast iron blocks 150, metal parts 1200. After upgrading the building to level 10, it provided 2 skills. The first one, exemplary crafting, can increase the production efficiency of the same product. It is a very practical capability. And the second, intermediate processing, records more leather crafting methods, which may include the method to create Swift Eagle soft leather. After all, this tier 2 material is nothing particularly rare or precious. Otherwise, it would have been priced sky high long ago. Fang Hao didn't hesitate and chose to recruit immediately. Tanner, wriggling spine 1, would you like to recruit? Recruit. A hundredfold amplification initiated, recruiting 101 skeleton tanners. A flurry of light twinkled. 101 skeleton tanners appeared around the house. The tanners had relatively tall skeletons, with leather aprons tied around their fronts, one hand holding a leather working knife, and the other performing a chopping motion. Both were tools for leather working. We are at your service, my lord, the group of skeleton tanners immediately saluted. Fang Hao nodded, welcome to the team. His gaze then turned to the tanner who was leading the group and walking out of the building. What is your name? My lord, my name is Bok. Good, Bok, from now on, you will be the chief of the tanners. For future related tasks, I will assign them to you, and you will distribute them. Fang Hao said. Skeleton tanner Bok's loyalty increased by 10 points, current loyalty 77. Even as undead, they are still eager for power. Each time someone is promoted to captain, their loyalty increases. Thank you for your trust, I will surely complete the tasks you assign, Bok said in a low voice. I believe in you, and I trust everyone else too, Fang Hao said with a smile. Skeleton Tanner, Tier 1. Racial traits: Undead, Hollow Skeleton, Weakness to Light. Skills: Rough Leather Processing, Leatherworking, Focused Processing. Rough Leather Processing, proficient in rough leather processing techniques, able to rework leftover scraps into something new. Leatherworking, expertise in leatherworking, production efficiency increased by plus 5%. Focused Processing, quality plus 5%, efficiency plus 5%. Innate skills: Leatherworking Mastery, Leather Goods Mastery. Note: tanners have long been known for their exquisite leatherworking skills, and they have jealously guarded their technical secrets for centuries. The tanner's attributes were quite good, and they came with 3 skills. He remembered when recruiting stone carvers, craftsmen themselves only had 2 skills. And from the tanner's note, it seems their craftsmanship is kept secret from outsiders. It's spoken of as if it were some kind of secret technique. After reviewing the attributes, Fang Hao directly took out soft rough leather and handed it to Bok. He said, "Bok, take a look at this leather and see if it's the material for making Swift Eagle soft leather." Bok accepted it, rubbing it with his white bony fingers. It had no sense of touch, so it was unclear what he was feeling for. Then, he nodded and said, "Yes, my lord, the rough skin of these flight units can be made into Swift Eagle leather." Upon hearing his definitive reply, joy surged in Fang Hao's heart, as it was indeed possible. If Bok could confirm it, it meant they could be crafted. Suppressing the excitement inside, he continued to ask, "Can you make this type of leather?" "Certainly, my lord, but we'll need some tools and materials," Bok continued. "What do you need? Tell me." "A tanning rack, and tanning glue," Bok continued. Fang Hao had blueprints for the tanning rack and could mass-produce them. As for tanning glue, he had not heard of it. Hopefully, it wouldn't require another blueprint that would take time to find. Tanning glue, is it difficult to obtain? Glue is simply a common adhesive made by boiling crushed bones and beast skin into a thick substance. We can produce it ourselves, it's not hard to get, said Bok. Fang Hao was relieved. The crafting capabilities of a transmigrator almost turned oneself redundant. Too dependent on the system's crafting function, everyone's manual skills had become worthless. Well, most transmigrators didn't have much manual skill to begin with. Assured that they could handle the production, Fang Hao said, "All right, I'll start by building new rooms for rest, a workshop for your craft, and the tanning racks. You can start working tomorrow. The bones and beast skin needed for the glue are in the warehouse, you can help yourselves to them." "Understood, my lord," Bok continued. Next, Fang Hao led the 101 skeleton tanners to the residential area of the undead. This place was more like a separate neighborhood. Within the courtyard walls stood neatly arranged 4-story buildings. Occasionally, one could see skeleton craftsmen coming in and out, making this area much more populated than the residential area of the living creatures. It just wasn't an atmosphere suitable for living beings. Choosing an open space, Fang Hao began constructing houses. One after another, 4-story stone towers rose from the ground before the eyes of the skeleton tanners. "Rooms, you'll divide them among yourselves. As for the furniture, you can pick from the warehouse. And if anyone wants to sleep in a coffin, there are some ready-made ones in the warehouse to the north," Fang Hao instructed. "Thank you, my lord." Skeleton Tanner Bok's loyalty has increased by 10 points, current loyalty 87. Skeleton Tanner, loyalty has increased by 8 points, current loyalty 72. Skeleton. A stream of prompts swiftly appeared. The loyalty of the skeleton tanners increased across the board. "Bok, you pick a room first. Then, you'll need to come with me to set up the factory," Fang Hao continued. "Certainly, my lord, please wait a moment," Bok nodded and immediately entered a nearby stone tower. In less than 2 minutes, he returned, "My lord, I have made my choice." Fang Hao nodded, "Good, then come with me." Side by side, a man and a skeleton walked toward the processing zone. Along the way, Fang Hao casually introduced him to various aspects of the territory, such as the living conditions, and what each area of the territory was used for. There was also information on a few key individuals. He wanted to prevent any extreme behavior that might occur when living creatures and undead encountered each other. Reaching an open space, he asked, "Will this place do? Any environmental requirements?" "There are no special requirements, my lord, as long as there is ample space and we can divide areas for leather crafting and material preparation," Bok said. Fang Hao thought for a while and marked an area with walls on an open field. Without the blueprints for a large, single-story factory, he could only draw up walls and have the skeleton laborers build a roof over the top. "This area is yours now. I'll arrange for someone to construct the roof for you tomorrow. For now, you can work on the outer grounds," Fang Hao continued. Bok did not raise any objections and nodded in agreement. Fang Hao then retrieved the blueprint for the tanning rack. Tanning rack, wood 12, iron 3, metal parts 3. He crafted 101 of them. And gave Bok 38,000 pieces of soft rough skin. Returning to the Lord's manor, Fang Hao took another shower. By the time he returned to his room, a seductively shaped maid was sitting by the bed. Today's maid was a fox woman. Seeing Fang Hao come in, her thick, fluffy tail began to wag. Her eyes smoldering like silk, she cooed, "Moss, master." Chapter 867. The next day, after breakfast, Fang Hao went to the tanner's district early in the morning. By the time he got there, the tanners had already started their work. Some took over from the skeleton laborers who were previously processing the leather, while others set up huge iron pots. Inside, a paste-like substance was stewing, thick and sticky. When he approached, he could smell a somewhat pungent odor. Fang Hao stood at the entrance, chatting with Bok for a while, and then didn't continue to pay attention to the tanner's situation. He led the replaced skeleton workers out towards the city's outskirts. As the territory developed, crafting and gathering were carried out exclusively by specialized troops. More skeleton laborers were arranged by Fang Hao to work in production buildings like the glass factory and the brick kiln, to increase the factory's production efficiency. As the territory kept expanding, not only did they need these materials, but the satellite cities did too. Therefore, a high output efficiency was very important. After dealing with these matters, Fang Hao, accompanied by Dimitrija, headed straight to Trade Alliance Station number 032. Today was the day he had arranged to meet with the leader of Dreamy Forest, Shinosara. Unless something unexpected happened, the other party shouldn't stand him up. When they arrived at the Trade Alliance's territory, right in front of the shop he had purchased. Across from the shop, next to the tavern, a group of people had gathered in an open space. They were quietly talking among themselves, facing the shop. And these people, judging by their looks and attire, were clearly transmigrators. Fang Hao was slightly taken aback so many transmigrators had managed to reach the Trade Alliance station. Oh! In an instant, he was reminded of the recent hot topics in the channels. No wonder offline meetups had become popular in the regional channels these past few days, they were using the Trade Alliance's station to meet up. Damn, I might as well open a love hotel. Dimitrija, you go into the store by yourself, I'm going to see what they're talking about. Fang Hao said. Dimitrija cast a glance at the gathering of transmigrators nearby, evaluated their threat level. After assessing for a while and deeming there was no great danger, especially since this was the Trade Alliance, he nodded in agreement, "All right, my lord." After speaking, he went straight into the shop. Meanwhile, Fang Hao approached the group of transmigrators. There were more than 10 people here, all men, some with militia at their sides, but none with special troop types. Seeing Fang Hao approach, they didn't take much notice. Ahem. What are you all looking at? Fang Hao asked a man on the edge of the group. The man was young and wore a gold chain around his neck. Without turning his head, he replied directly, "Don't you have eyes?" I do, but what's so interesting to look at?" Fang Hao asked, puzzled. The man started and turned around abruptly to look at Fang Hao. "Are you non-tung?" "Nope, I'm Fule." The man sized him up again before saying, "You don't like bunny girls? You don't like fox spirits?" I like." "Cut it. Then we're friends now." While they were talking, another man encouraged by a group of men stepped out with a bouquet of flowers in hand and headed straight into the shop to offer them to Little White. But Little White clearly wasn't receiving flowers for the first time. She smiled politely and directly rejected the man's gesture. Compared to the other maids, Little White had seen more of the world, having run a shop herself. She reacted quickly to the situation. The man professing his love returned dejectedly, tossing the flowers aside without care. The man with the gold chain next to Fang Hao sighed softly. The 7th one, and not a single success. So early and already the 7th. Fang Hao exclaimed. "No joke, the early bird gets the worm," the man with the gold chain said directly. After thinking for a moment, Fang Hao asked curiously, "Don't you have women in your territories?" At that comment, several other men around turned their heads to look at Fang Hao. Another man asked, "You have women in your territory?" "Yeah," Fang Hao nodded. The man with the gold chain went on, "So what if there are women? I've taken in quite a few refugees in my territory, of course there are women, but none of them compare to these bunny girls and fox spirits here. You're better off than me around my territory, there are just orcs with huge mouths and sharp fangs. The female orc's legs are thicker than my waist. Man, it's all the same in the dark, you're too picky, Fang Hao said. I'm not picky, it's her who says she's not feeling it. Speaking of which, bunny girls are still orcs, right? Why haven't I come across them? The three of them chatted in low voices when another person was pushed forward. He carried something that looked like a jewelry box, likely filled with rings or necklaces, and walked into the shop. This person was more formal. He got down on one knee before a bunny maid, loudly declaring his love. The bunny maid was so frightened her cheeks turned pale. She ran upstairs immediately, leaving the man kneeling alone, holding the jewelry box, looking somewhat lost. After hesitating for a while, he slowly got up, shouted a few words like "I'm serious and I will win you over" towards the second floor, and then returned to the group. The eighth one, and jewelry didn't work, the man with the gold chain remarked. Wow, they were seriously strategizing. In the time that followed, one after another approached to make small talk, present gifts, and one who looked like a rich second generation went to show off his wealth. All were met with failure in the end. Chapter 868. Failure is failure, but the crowd nearby was growing bigger and closer to 40 people. Among them, there were also some female transmigrators who joined the discussion as well. It was like attending a comic convention, where they occasionally pulled out the Book of Lords and took a couple of pictures. Fang Hao watched, somewhat speechless. Could it really be this serious? Looks like I should switch to the Daughter of the Earth Spirit for cleaning duty tomorrow. The Daughter of the Earth Spirit, although also resembling a human, had a muscular body, more pronounced than that of a fitness coach. That should solve the problem. What sauna? Asked the man with the gold chain. Is this a sauna? Can you get a foot bath here? Wash your sister. Just then, the 14th person to be turned down came back. They threw the gift they were holding onto the ground and angrily said, "This bunny girl NPC definitely doesn't like men, otherwise, with my good looks, there's no way I wouldn't have been successful." Pfft. At that moment, another person stood up and said, "Whoever can find a successful strategy, I've got a green Tauren helmet blueprint here for them. I'll offer up a green blueprint too. Whoever can confess their love successfully gets it. I'll put in 20 Warfire coins. I've got a pair of green boots. I offer a blue one-handed sword, from Fang Hao's big shot store. I want the strategy." One by one, the crowd chimed in, and the man with the gold chain even put his chain on the line as part of the bet. Suddenly, the people nearby were even more eager to try. Anyway, it was worth a shot, and with several failures already, failing themselves wouldn't be embarrassing. Seeing the scene getting more lively with the crowd raring to go, Fang Hao stood at the very back and made a gesture across the way. Then he saw Dimitrija pull out the long sword at her waist and take a seat at the door. That calmed some of the excited transmigrators down a bit. Wow, that golden armor looks so cool, and that thick tail. Is it a dragon man? Dragon man, my foot, that's a lizardman. I've seen them before. I thought bunny girls were orcs. How did it turn into a lizardman now? That must be a hero. Someone go over and see, maybe they can recruit her. The topic quickly shifted from the bunny girl to the lizardman. Someone approached to strike up a conversation, but when Dimitrija reached for her longsword, the transmigrator bowed and quickly turned away. Coming back, they excitedly announced, "Holy cow! An orange hero, so damn awesome! Damn!" In an instant, the area erupted with exclamations of "damn!" Fang Hao sat at the back end of the crowd, listening to their chatter. From the conversations, he could discern the state of the various powers in the surrounding areas and identify which ones were more approachable. Those who were friendly to transmigrators weren't the ones to skin you and eat you at first sight. As time trickled by, Fang Hao grew impatient, checking the time. It was already 11 o'clock. Although he wasn't sure why, it looked like Shinasura wasn't planning on keeping the appointment. Just as he was about to leave, he heard the man with the gold chain let out another cry of surprise. "Look at that! A tree woman, so sexy!" Fang Hao looked over to see a troop from the fairy clan approaching. The one at the front was Shinasura, outlined by a few vines into a human shape, with guards of the fairy clan around her and flower demons flitting near. "Sexy? What kind of taste is that?" Fang Hao waved them in, signaling for them to enter the shop first. Shinasura glanced over here, then headed straight into the store. Holy crap, they also entered this sauna place. What's the deal here? Orc, lizardman, and now a plant person. I'm positive, that was a hero just now, and not a low-level one either. The crowd shifted their focus once again, now discussing the just-seen tree woman. Fang Hao realized that these people were so bored, they wouldn't turn away anything. Quietly, he walked away from the crowd and towards the store. The moment he stepped out, the surrounding people began to cheer. Hey, there goes a brave soul who dares face his heart. I was wondering why he hadn't made a move until now. Now that he sees the tree woman, he can't control himself. Hey! The man with the gold chain shouted, stay strong, brother, there's no shame in it. Go for it, brother. Fang Hao turned back and gave everyone a thumbs up before entering the shop. Master, Little White smiled happily. The surrounding maids were also flashing sparkly eyes. All right, rest a bit. It's almost noon, that should do. Fang Hao rubbed the top of her head. The two ears twitched non-stop, all smiles. Yes, master, Little White replied. All right, Fang Hao continued, Dimitrija, come upstairs with me. Yes, my lord. After speaking, the two headed upstairs. Across from the shop. It was as silent as a graveyard, silent as death. The 40 or so transmigrators' eyes were wide open, filled with disbelief at what had just happened. What's going on? He went inside? And he went upstairs? What's the deal with those bunny and fox girls? Why do they look at him with such peculiar, almost adoring anticipation? These people had basically been camped out here every day, not exactly confessing their love daily, but certainly trying every trick in the book to boost their favorability. But until now, they had never seen such looks from these bunny and fox girls towards any man. It was as if they had seen a ghost. What's the deal, why do those bunnies look like that? Chapter 869. Damn, that shouldn't be right. I'm not less handsome than him, so how can he outdo me? I get it now, those bunny and fox ladies are from the orc clan. They like the ugly ones. Big brother, you are the ugly one, okay. He couldn't have known those bunnies beforehand, could he? Impossible, I saw him hesitating before he walked over from our side. It was only at the very end that he dared to go. Damn his dumb luck, I'd be happy with just one bunny girl, but why do they all like his expression? Who is he, anyway? Who knows him? Everyone turned to look at the man with the gold chain. Earlier, the man with the gold chain and this person had been sitting together, chatting happily. Facing everyone's resentful glares, the man with the gold chain shivered and hurriedly said, I don't know him, I also met him here, only know his name is either Fu Wei or Fu Lei. Fu Wei. The crowd began to open their books of lords, searching for this name. The hatred of an adulterer refused to be shared under the same sky. Elsewhere. Second floor of the shop. Each group of people sat on opposite sides, giving a feel of a mafia negotiation. The shop was still under renovation, with only a few wooden stools available for the maids to rest. Mr. Fang Hao, thank you for saving my kin. Your kindness will earn the friendship of the fairy clan, Shinasura started, her face entwined with tree branches, showing a soft smile similar to that of a human. Fang Hao also smiled, it was nothing, don't mention it. Yesterday, the woodland attendant who had escaped, had told Shinasura about being captured and then rescued by Fang Hao and the others. He briefly described what he had seen in terms of numbers and military equipment. Although it was just a rough description, it still greatly surprised Shinasura. She was well aware of how troublesome those ice bat monkeys were. Their dreamy forest might not dare to directly attack the ice bat monkey's habitat with troops. However, the returning woodland attendant told her. After the first gunshot from below the mountain, it took only 2 or 3 hours to push to the summit. All the ice bat monkeys in the area were eliminated, and they began clearing the battlefield. Hearing this news, Shinasura hardly believed it, and if everyone hadn't said the same, she would have thought they were lying to her. Having accepted this fact, she became even more fearful of Fang Hao's rate of development. Before, she was merely unable to defeat Fang Hao, now she felt fear. The fairy clan appreciated their benefactor and also respected the strong. Shinasura nodded and continued, may I ask what matter Mr. Fang Hao wishes to discuss? Fang Hao didn't beat around the bush and cut straight to the chase, I wish to form a partnership with the fairy clan. Oh? In what way? Food. The fairy clan are nature's favorites and are more skilled in farming and forest protection, so I'd like to cooperate with you in this area. Shinasura squinted her eyes, seemingly surprised that Fang Hao brought up this topic. After thinking for a moment, she continued, "Do you mean to say, you plan to buy human food from us?" Fang Hao shook his head, "Not necessarily buying food directly, perhaps hiring some of your people to farm on my lands. Buying food would be no different from dealing with the trade alliance." Hiring people to farm seemed to Fang Hao a more cost-effective solution, and it would also allow some farmers to learn farming techniques from the fairy clan. Hiring. Shinasura frowned. The Dreamy Forest has never had this kind of cooperation with any other race. Chapter 870. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps echoed from the staircase. The rabbit maids, who had bought beverages from the opposite tavern, placed them in the hands of Mr. Fang Hao and the fairy clan. These were just small sums, not amounting to much. The fairies took them. The palm-sized flower demon also transformed into adult-sized figures and began to taste. Once the maids had retreated again, Mr. Fang Hao continued, "There's always a first time. The cooperation between us will benefit both sides, enhancing the strength of our territories significantly." Shinasura nodded, indicating agreement with Mr. Fang Hao's statement. Dreamy Forest too had transmigrators establishing territories, and Shinasura was one of them. Thus, Shinasura had observed the appearance and development of transmigrators, currently supporting them within the fairy clan. However, these transmigrators were vastly inferior to Mr. Fang Hao. They couldn't compare. The transmigrators of Dreamy Forest were still thinking of ways to swindle benefits from the fairy clan. Yet, Mr. Fang Hao was already sitting at the same negotiation table with her and had the power to destroy Dreamy Forest. Perhaps it was just as Mr. Fang Hao had said. The development of the fairy clan had encountered issues. Sticking to one place was not a problem, but now they were significantly lagging behind others, so they needed to try to change. To close the gap with other forces. How do we cooperate, and what can the fairy clan gain? Shinasura leaned forward, looking directly into Mr. Fang Hao's eyes. That depends on what the fairy clan needs now. Warfire coins, resources, weapons, armor, or some other tasks you're not skilled in handling, you need to specify, and then we can discuss it. Mr. Fang Hao tossed the question back. He was, of course, willing to trade weapons and equipment, seeing as he could amplify a single unit of material by 100-fold. But it depended on whether the fairy clan needed them. Shinasura turned to look at the others behind her before saying to Mr. Fang Hao, "Mr. Fang Hao, may we discuss this amongst ourselves?" Of course, Mr. Fang Hao looked at her and asked, "Do you need us to step out?" "No need." After saying this, Shinasura immediately closed her eyes. Meanwhile, in Dreamy Forest. The forest appeared somewhat gloomy due to its density. At the center of Dreamy Forest stood a massive oak tree with intertwined roots and a thick trunk that soared straight into the sky. At that moment, a branch fell from the canopy of the giant tree. After hitting the ground, it quickly coiled and gradually took the shape of Shinasura. "Leader Shinasura," the various fairy guards began to speak. Shinasura nodded, "Summon all the elders to a meeting." "Yes, leader," the fairy guards quickly relayed the message. This tree was Shinasura, and it was also Dreamy Forest. Before long, in a wooden house built from trees, the room was now filled with the fairy clan's elders. Shinasura sat at the head of the table, recounted her conversation with Mr. Fang Hao at the Trade Alliance post to everyone present. Then she opened, "That's the situation, what are your thoughts?" Everyone remained silent for a while. The fairy clan's hero, Shirel, was the first to speak. "I recall that Mr. Fang Hao is with the Undead clan, and I feel there's a significant risk in cooperating with him." Shadow Crown Sword Shirel was a purple 5th-tier hero. Previously, at the Trade Alliance post, he had a conflict with Mr. Fang Hao, and it was only after the fairy clan offered compensation that the Trade Alliance released him. Deep down, he was reluctant to see the fairy clan continue any dealings with Mr. Fang Hao. Shinasura glanced at him and nodded, her gaze then shifting to several other fairy elders. "What are your thoughts? Speak up." A flower demon elder thought for a moment before saying, "I actually see no problem in cooperating with him. With Mr. Fang Hao's rapid development, establishing a friendly relationship could be beneficial for us." Another elder nodded in agreement, "There's harm in the cooperation itself, it mostly depends on what he can offer us. If it's a losing deal, we can still refuse it later." With that said, the others also nodded in agreement. Whether or not to cooperate still depended on what the other party offered. "I agree to cooperate." "I also agree." One after another, the fairy elders began to express their positions. Suddenly, a majority were in favor. Leader Shinasara also glanced at everyone and nodded slightly, which aligned with her thoughts. Now, with most choosing to cooperate, she was spared from exercising her leader's authority. She continued, about the terms of cooperation, Mr. Fang Hao said it's up to us to decide, money, resources, or equipment. This. The others exchanged glances. In this region, the fairy clan wasn't wealthy. Both money and equipment were needed. I think we should choose warfire coins. If we need money, we can buy it ourselves, why do we need him to provide it? If he can offer equipment of blue quality or higher, I think that would be more cost-effective. Especially since the conflicts with the orcs at the border are increasing, this equipment could offer better protection. No, choosing money would result in a sustained improvement for Dreamy Forest. The orcs are practically at our doorstep, they won't give you time to keep improving. With the leader present, the orcs wouldn't dare to enter Dreamy Forest. Chapter 871. Then have you forgotten about the ice bat monkeys? We couldn't even rescue our captured tribespeople. Everyone was talking at once, creating chaos at the scene. The fairy clan rarely held such meetings, the direction of development had been fixed for the past century. After all, the leader Shinasara had a much longer lifespan. But over the years, the fairies of Dreamy Forest seemed to have become isolated. They defended their own territory and rarely interacted with the outside world, showing no significant development. In contrast, the situation outside has changed dramatically due to the appearance of transmigrators. The equipment reform of various tribes, as well as their battles and plunder, were rapidly developing, which made the fairy clan appear weaker and weaker. The orcs that were troubling the fairy clan were just a slightly larger tribe. Looking at it this way, the fairies lacked both money and equipment. They lacked everything. The elder responsible for development asked for money, and the elder in charge of the troops asked for equipment. They argued incessantly. Enough, stop arguing. Shinasara had to intervene to stop them. Everyone shut their mouths and looked at her, seeking guidance. Shinasara continued, the safety of Dreamy Forest truly needs to be taken seriously. Compared to other races, the fairy clan has always been falling behind. We need to find a way to make up for this. No one spoke, waiting for the leader to continue. Shinasara looked at an elder and asked, how many people can we spare for this planting project? The elder thought for a moment and said, about 20,000. Taking away so many at once, not to mention whether the tribe's people would be willing, Dreamy Forest might be affected. The fairy clan, each military unit inherently possessed skills in planting or cultivation. But the moment you take away these 20,000, there will be disarray within the territory. The tribe's people all have families. Taking them away directly would cause chaos within the clan. Shinasara nodded, okay, I understand. I'll go and discuss this further with Fang Hao. With that said, she closed her eyes. Trade Alliance, the shop. Time passed by, and Fang Hao waited silently. The Shinasara, who had closed her eyes, was like a wooden sculpture, sitting in the chair. As time changed, her body began to sprout buds. Her feet touching the floor started rooting themselves, connecting with the floor. Fang Hao was stunned. My little maids have it tough enough as it is, don't start growing a tree here. About half an hour passed. The wooden sculpture suddenly opened her eyes, and the branches that had grown on her body quickly wrapped around her. The parts of her feet connected to the floor quickly retracted. She returned to the original appearance of Shinasara that he had first seen. Mr. Fang Hao. Shinasara nodded in greeting. Leader Shinasara, have you come to a decision? Fang Hao returned the smile. Shinasara continued, there are some details that I still need to discuss with Mr. Fang Hao. Oh? Please speak. We can provide 20,000 people to help with your farming. We need money and equipment. That's no problem. However, Shinasara's expression showed difficulty, and she continued, but these 20,000 have their own families and loved ones. It may not be possible to relocate them. Fang Hao paused for a moment, then quickly understood what she meant. His thinking was on the hiring of military units. The units recruited from buildings didn't have families or even the desire for deep interaction between men and women. Therefore, such units were easy to deploy, anywhere around the world, without any ties. But it was different for the indigenous people. Family ties meant you could perhaps relocate hundreds, but not tens of thousands at once without affecting the whole of Dreamy Forest. What do you mean for dreamy forest? Fang Hao continued to inquire. Shinasura thought for a moment and then said, well, you can leave the planting to us. We'll select appropriate land around dreamy forest ourselves to cultivate and we'll also ensure a corresponding output. Fang Hao considered this and found it to be a good idea. He wouldn't have to provide for their living and safety, which was beneficial for his side. That's acceptable. What are the terms of exchange? The contract is for 1 year, 1 million warfire coins as well as 2,000 sets of blue armor, Shinasura stated plainly. At base 01 of the trade alliance, the price for a piece of blue armor was around 200 warfire coins. A set, considered as 4 pieces of armor and 1 weapon, that is, 5 pieces, would be 1,000 warfire coins. 2,000 sets would come to 2 million warfire coins in price. With a hundredfold increase in output due to enhancements, it would only cost 1% of the materials. This was acceptable to him. Plus the million warfire coins, the annual cost per person would amount to only 150 warfire coins. And the planting yield by the fairy clan was 5 times that of humans. With expedited production, it could be even more. Considering the calculations, it would be much more cost-effective than buying food. After understanding this, Fang Hao nodded. Can we replace the warfire coins with equipment? Assembling such a large sum might be difficult. Shinasura shook her head. We also need currency for development. Seeing her refusal, Fang Hao did not press further. Instead, he said, I'll pay you a 20% down payment first, then 40% at mid-year, and the remaining at the end of the year. Shinasura paused, then quickly grasped Fang Hao's intention. This payment approach was a safeguard for both parties. Chapter 872. He nodded in agreement. Sure, when will the payment be made? Tomorrow, same place, just arrange for someone to come and collect it, Fang Hao instructed. It was apparent that the fairy clan was lacking in equipment and funds. This was the first collaboration, both parties were trying to gauge each other. Fang Hao believed that gradually, as the fairy clan noticed significant development through working with him, they would send more people to help with his farming. Agreed. Thus, a transaction was struck between the two parties. Fang Hao was unconcerned about them reneging after receiving the money. Considering his current military strength, the dreamy forest would not dare to breach the agreement. It gave Fang Hao reason to incorporate them under his command. After discussing some subsequent details, the group also saw off the fairies. Fang Hao glanced out the window across the street from the second floor. The gathering crowd had grown even larger. He activated the teleportation screen and left from the second floor directly. The Human Federation, the eastern border. Fort Santa. Being at the border with the undead, the Federation had also expended considerable resources to fortify this city into a formidable fortress. A level 12 fortress city. The massing of troops by both sides at the border had turned the city into a ghost town within a matter of months. Initially, the city's nobles and wealthy merchants were the first to leave. Later came the city's residents, who, carrying their belongings and whatever else they could take, began to flee westward. Anyone who could leave had left. Even some city officials and guards started to desert. Many were caught by the commanders of the Hall of Justice and executed, before the organization took over command of the city. That action restored a semblance of stability to the fortress city. The city lord's mansion. The city lord, Fulban, sat at the head of the room, visibly anxious. He, an inherited city lord, had begun to dread coming to the mansion, fearing the news from the border. Because every message filled him with terror. Fear that today's news would be of the undead's onslaught. Winter had just passed, there were hordes of refugees, and the granaries were empty. Any one of these could be a cause for defeat on the battlefield, but now all 3 conditions were ominously present. Through various channels and information, it was clear that war seemed inevitable. Those with connections and wealth had already left long ago. Yet only he had been left behind, under the daily surveillance of the Hall of Justice, with the mansion's guards replaced by others. Ahem, Lord City Lord, let us begin. Below, a man clad in the armored chainmail of the Hall of Justice spoke up. The man in chainmail was the commander sent by the Hall of Justice this time, named Nidam. Over 40, burly, with an emblem of a valiant horn stitched on his chest and one hand on the hilt of his sword, he emanated an intimidating presence. Fulban's face tightened, and he promptly said, coming up next is the 5th negotiation with the undead, what are your thoughts, everyone? During this period, negotiations had been going back and forth repeatedly. But the outcome was that the situation had become even more tense. A woman below, dressed in an embroidered robe of waves and clouds, spoke up first. After such a long delay, the undead are not retreating. These repetitive negotiations, in my opinion, are deliberate stalling tactics. We should strike first and eliminate a bunch of undead. This person was named Maple, a representative of the Mage Association. Behind her were several accompanying mages, and Li Rong, who pretended to listen earnestly but kept her gaze on the Book of City Lord. No sooner had Maple finished speaking than someone stood to object. Mage Lord, that sounds like a lofty statement made from high in the clouds, doesn't it? This individual was a local commander, in charge of the city's military strength. City Lord Fulbin had tried to flee several times, but the Hall of Justice didn't execute him because the commanders here were supported by the local city lords. Oh? And what does this commander think? Maple retorted. Stepping forward, the commander glanced up at the city lord and declared loudly, winter has just passed, and the granaries are depleted. Going to war now would put us at a clear disadvantage. We should prioritize negotiating peace, even if it means making some concessions. Chapter 873. As soon as this statement was made, all the generals on the city lord's side immediately echoed their agreement. Maple, however, scoffed coldly, negotiating peace is what we from the human clan want to see, but it might not be what the undead desire, otherwise they wouldn't keep dragging this out. Of course, we should prioritize trying to resolve this peacefully, otherwise what do you suggest we do, fight it out? Can we even win? Another local minister said. At that moment, the bishop of the church also spoke, conceding is merely about giving the undead money to better arm themselves, eventually, they will only grow stronger. When the church spoke up, none of the city's ministers retorted. Unlike the Mage Association, a rarely seen force, offending the church really could be fatal. City Lord Fulbin wiped the sweat from his brow and asked, then what should we do? Both sides fell silent. It was then that the commander of the Hall of Justice spoke up, if we can negotiate peace, that's naturally best, but if not, we aren't afraid of them, either. The dwarven cannons and all the supplies from various cities are on the way, so there's no need to worry. The strategist of the Hall of Justice was named Nidam. He was a burly middle-aged man in his 40s, clad in the hall's renowned armor of justice, his hand on the hilt of his sword, projecting immense deterrence. Upon hearing that the cannons and supplies were on their way, voices audibly relaxed. The commander of the Hall of Justice continued, I, along with the Mage Association and the church, will go to the negotiations. The rest of you should stay in the city and wait for news. Outside the city, at the border with the great cemetery of Odis, a huge tent had been temporarily set up. Currently, inside the tent, representatives from the humans and the undead, each on one side, were engaged in their fifth negotiation. The representatives on the human side were Nidam from the Hall of Justice, Maple from the Mage Association, and Suhaid from the church. The trio, with Nidam at the core. The church didn't arrange for a bishop to attend, considering the delicate relationship between the church and the undead, opting instead for Saint Suhaid to represent them. On the undead's side was the corpse witch Jarl. King Odis, have you considered the Federation's opinion? Retreating and maintaining the stability of the borders is the prerequisite for peace, Commander Nidam said in a deep voice. The corpse witch Jarl, holding his wooden staff, spoke softly, Lord Odis' intention is simple. If you want us to pull back, should the Federation not withdraw its troops first? The several people exchanged glances. The undead had not mentioned anything about paying compensation. Humans long for peace, as long as you withdraw first, we will naturally follow, Nidam continued. The corpse witch Jarl, sitting unmoved in his chair, simply replied, you withdraw first. Impossible, the undead must withdraw their troops first, Nidam said. The corpse witch spoke, you withdraw first. The two of them kept repeating you withdraw first, without a second line. Mage Maple spoke up to interrupt, Mr. Corpse Witch, the battlefield execution force of the undead is far superior to that of humans. Only if you withdraw your troops first, can both sides return to a peaceful situation. What she referred to as battlefield execution force was the capability of the legions within the undead clan. The undead didn't have to consider various factors such as baggage trains, support, or weather. At one command, the entire forces would charge. They were more decisive and fast in launching attacks than humans. Of course, when humans were fully prepared, their response was not slower than the undead's. But living creatures were still influenced by emotions and prone to various problems at the brink of battle. The corpse witch Jarl glanced at her, then blandly said, "Humans withdraw first." The expressions of the human side turned grim. Behind the mage, the seemingly inconspicuous Li Rong almost burst out laughing. She hadn't participated in the previous sessions, but the current negotiation was just like a quarrel on some channel. One side was aggressive, the other curmudgeonly. Fang Hao's side also had a corpse witch. Could it be the same curmudgeonly kind? If they all behaved like that, it would definitely be amusing. The more she thought about it, the funnier it seemed. Nidam snorted coldly and declared, "Are the undead really intending to start a war? Do you really think your great cemetery could compete against the Human Federation?" Yet the corpse witch still showed little movement, responding the same as before. What followed was both sides going back and forth endlessly. The human side demanded that the undead withdraw their military forces placed at the border back to previous numbers. The undead agreed, but insisted that the humans should withdraw their troops first. The Federation had already dispatched a large force upon discovering the undead amassing at the border. How could they possibly withdraw first? After arguing for a while, the corpse witch Jarl stood up and said, "I will relay today's content to Lord Odis. I will inform you if there is any news." With that, he left the tent with a group of undead. The human side looked even more displeased. What was there to relay except the issue of who should withdraw first? It had been discussed numerous times before. After the undead left, the humans also left the tent, wary in case the undead had any tricks up their sleeves to wipe them out all at once. Mounting their horses, under the escort of the military, they began their return to Fort Santa. During the return, none displayed a good expression. Having negotiated for so long without any progress made everyone extremely gloomy. Mage Maple spoke up, "The undead are just stalling for time. Those fools like Fulbin even planned to compensate. How could the Federation entrust the border to such people? It was fortunate they had received prior information." Chapter 874. Otherwise, a sudden undead attack and expecting the likes of Fulbin to fend them off would be a joke. Nidam turned his gaze to Saint Suhaid. "Saint Suhaid, do you have any new information on your side?" Suhaid had planted spies within the great cemetery of the undead, a fact already known to the few present. They were also obtaining updates on the great cemetery through that secret informant. Of course, all of this had been arranged by Fang Hao and Li Rong. Suhaid puffed out his chest and said, "Last night, I received a message from the informant that the great cemetery is speeding up the production of equipment and has begun to work overtime." Upon hearing this, the expressions of Nidam and Maple changed for the worse in an instant. They were indeed buying time. "Have you notified the church?" Nidam asked solemnly. Suhaid shook his head and replied, "Before I came here, I had already reported this news to the Archbishop." "Good." Nidam nodded. The mage Maple beside them glanced at Li Rong and said, "Li Rong, pass this message to President Grigorya as well." "Understood." Li Rong rarely spoke and had been acting as a messenger ever since she arrived. She transmitted the message back to Silverwing City, where her subordinate would deliver it to the Mage Association. The Book of City Lord was much more useful than the sound-transmitting shell. It also had a photographing feature to better convey the current situation. For the rest of the journey, everyone fell into silence. The increasingly tense situation at the border put immense pressure on their minds as well. War was no laughing matter. Once it started, corpses would be strewn everywhere. Similarly, their safety was also a concern. Upon returning to Fort Santa, they all went back to their own residences separately. In a beautifully furnished room, Li Rong first sent an account of the day's events to her subordinate, instructing him to deliver it to the Mage Association. Then, she sent a copy to Fang Hao. Fang Hao focused on the human side's preparations and arrangements and the increasingly tense situation between the two forces. But Fang Hao sent back only one message in reply. "Understood, stay safe." After responding with a simple "Okay, moi," Li Rong exchanged it for some food, which she placed on the dining table. Once the table was set, Li Rong and the dark elf Morse chatted while eating. Actually, being here didn't affect her much. She continued to eat and drink as usual, and the quality of her life hadn't declined at all. It was just that she was somewhat worried about whether the war, if it broke out, would pose any danger to her. Knock, knock, knock. At that moment, the door was gently knocked on. "Come in." The door opened, and Suhaid, now dressed in the simple attire of a saint, walked straight in. Li Rong's brow furrowed. She had thought it was Mage Maple coming, but instead, it was Suhaid. Miss Li Rong, Su-Haid smiled and greeted her with the grace of a sunny young gentleman. Su-Haid, what brings you here? Li Rong asked flatly. Miss Li Rong, the Great War could break out at any moment. We are all transmigrators, which makes us family. We must help each other when the time comes, Su-Haid said with a gentle smile, his gaze shifting to the purple hero Morse beside her. Li Rong noticed where he was looking and understood his intentions. He saw that Li Rong had a purple hero for protection and had come to build a closer relationship. The heroes allocated by both the Church and the Mage Association were loyal to their respective forces. In the event of war, they would not prioritize the safety of transmigrators like themselves. But the situation was different with recruited heroes. Their primary duty was to protect the safety of the lords. With war imminent, he too was worried about his own safety and came to cozy up to Li Rong. Li Rong offered a smile and said, "Of course, as transmigrators, we should naturally support each other." Despite saying so, she was cursing him and his ancestors in her mind. Previously, when they had no contact with each other, Su-Haid had arranged for Cao Genzi to harm her. If she hadn't obtained the cannons, she would be either dead or tortured beyond recognition by now. And now he expects me to save him? If I don't stab you a few times, consider yourself lucky for running fast. But the smile on his face remained amiable. Hearing this response, Su-Haid felt much relieved and continued, "The situation hasn't gotten too serious. If the undead make any moves, I will be the first to get the news, and I will inform you in advance." Li Rong still smiled, "That's great, you really have a way, having arranged for informants so early. Of course, coming to this strange world, we have to plan ahead for future development to stay ahead of others," Su-Haid said. Men always think further ahead, she commented. The two chatted aimlessly for a while, and seeing that Li Rong hadn't finished her meal yet, Su-Haid didn't stay long. He said his goodbyes and left. Continuing upstairs, who knows whom he was off to network with next. When the sound of footsteps had completely faded, Morse spoke up, "He's not as friendly to you as he appears to be on the surface." Li Rong sneered and said softly, "When there's a suitable opportunity, help me kill him." Morse was taken aback. They had just been chatting amiably, and now she was talking about killing someone she was even more ruthless than a professional assassin. Dusk. The main city. In an open area outside the city, specifically used to assemble military forces. Fang Hao opened the Book of Lords and found the blueprint of the Hare airship. After a day of work, the tanners had completed 62 pieces of Swift Eagle leather. It seemed like it was time to try building an aerial ship. He opened the Book of Lords, found the blueprint, and started crafting. 100 times amplification triggered, obtained 101 Hare airship hull parts. 100 times amplification triggered, obtained 101 Hare airship sail parts. 100 times amplification triggered, obtained 101 Hare airship deck parts. 100 times amplification triggered, obtained 101 Hare airship tower parts. Crackle and pop, the large ship body components scattered across the ground in front of him. If it weren't for the intricate structures covering the ship bodies, the scattered parts would look more like pieces of a sea ship. Fang Hao continued crafting. Small Hare airship blueprint, Energy Core 1, Hare airship hull 1, Hare airship deck 1, Hare airship tower 1, Hare airship sail 1. After some thought, he decided to set the production number to 1 first. Currently, he only had 2 energy cores on hand. It was better to assess the performance and practicality before making more. Confirmed the production. 100 times amplification triggered, obtained small Hare airship 101. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The nearest components vanished, and enormous aerial ships fell from the sky. This gave Fang Hao quite a scare, prompting him and a few mates and daughters of the Earth Spirit watching the excitement to step back. However, the anticipated crash didn't happen. Just as the aerial ships were about 2 meters above the ground, they stopped falling as if power had been restored and hung in midair, causing a gust of wind and dust. Fang Hao breathed a sigh of relief and then began to inspect the finished aerial ships. The ship's body was similar in shape to a fishing boat but had a more sci-fi design, with fin-like sails on either side and a sturdy canopy on top. Above the canopy were 2 long, rabbit ear-like hot air balloons. Presumably, this was the origin of the aerial ship's name. By now, more and more people had come out to see what the fuss was all about. Wow, so this is an aerial ship, so cool. Below, a group of mates all let out gasps of awe. Even Dimitrija and Aseti, who were seeing such goblin technology flying in the air for the first time, were amazed. If we really fly up there, will we fall off? One of them wondered. We shouldn't, if such a huge ship can fly, carrying a few people shouldn't be a problem, another reasoned. A crowd gathered, whispering among themselves. For those who had lived their lives on the ground, the sky was both a dream and a fear. After watching for a while, Fang Hao said to Meat Fist behind him, "Bring over a cannon and an organ gun, and call over the blacksmith as well." "Right away, my lord," Meat Fist nodded and quickly departed. Chapter 875. Wild Hare Small Aerial Ship, Orange. Category, Magic Technology. Machinery Strength, Level 5. Abilities, Magic Structure, drifts with the wind. Magic Structure, magic technology that will not collapse or rout, immune to all negative states such as panic and silence, powered by magic energy. Drifts with the wind, this aerial ship can maintain its course with the wind. Description: since ancient times, terrestrial races have always longed to soar into the skies. Although this dream was realized through large flying beasts and magic technology, on the other hand, the restless scholars also attempted to develop a means to more conveniently transport larger numbers of people and goods to distant places, hence the birth of the aerial ship. Looking up at the aerial ship, information appeared before his eyes. Based on the information displayed, the flight ship was more akin to a construct, given that their energy sources were the same. The ship's defense level had reached level 5, which was considered quite high. And he remembered, when he first made the stone monster construct, its defense level was only level 4. But the level 5 here probably refers to an iron-plated hull. For something like a hot air balloon, it would still be relatively weak. For combat, it would require some strategic thinking, it was not possible to just brute force head-on. The aerial ship had two abilities, namely magic structure and drifts with the wind. The introductions were very clear and pertained to the flight ship's own capabilities. The aerial ship hovered in the air, 2 meters above the ground, with a rope ladder dangling from the hull. Quite unimpressive. But it was understandable. According to the introduction, this was the earliest goblin transport vessel for cargo, so it being simple was to be expected. If needed, it could also be redecorated. He stopped the maids who were trying to follow him up. Fang Hao, accompanied by Dimitrija, boarded the aerial ship. The spacious wooden deck, almost at the stern tower, was indeed not much different from a sea ship. The hull was about 10 meters long and nearly 5 meters wide, considerably larger than the small fishing boats he had seen at Fulei's place. Stepping forward to roughly measure it, without considering the space of the stern tower, one side of the deck could accommodate 3 or 4 cannons. 8 cannons on both sides combined, but placing them on both sides wouldn't be very effective. If there were to attack the great cemetery of Odis, cannons on one side would be sufficient. The other side would be for shooting one's own people. Calculating in his mind, Meat Fist arrived with the blacksmith Cullen, climbing up the rope ladder. "My lord, the cannons have been brought down below," Meat Fist spoke. Fang Hao, leaning on the railing, glanced downwards. Skeleton warriors were tying the cannons tightly with hemp rope, the other end bound to the skeletal frame of a bone dragon. They planned to use the bone dragon to transport the cannons onto the aerial ship. Fang Hao nodded. He didn't bother with the skeletons hoisting the cannons, but continued into the stern tower with the others. Located at the very rear of the ship, the stern tower seemed more like a steering area. Inside was a circular helm, to the left was a row of mechanical buttons, and on the right were 3 slender levers. This mix of retro vibe and technology really gave it a goblin magic feel. Fang Hao looked at the buttons, which were not labeled with text but with symbols instead. They presumably represented different functions. It looked quite complicated. At the same time, another idea occurred to him: the aerial ship had a control room, signifying that it required someone to operate it. It was different than a construct that could move on its own. Shit! Given the current staffing situation of the territory, nobody knew how to operate such a vessel. Fang Hao didn't dare to touch anything recklessly, worried that the wrong button might make the aerial ship take off. If it crashed directly into the city, the damage would be severe. After checking the stern tower, he went out and descended the stairs into the cabin. The interior of the ship was dimly lit, surrounded by sealed wooden and steel plates. He brought out a nightstone for lighting, only then could he see the interior structure clearly. At the forward part was a wide empty hold, accounting for 60% of the interior space, likely intended for carrying cargo. The rooms behind consisted of individual chambers, with the foremost one, situated below the stern tower, containing various precise machinery. These machines connected to the energy core, the heart of the ship's operation. The rest of the rooms were empty. Whether they were to become resting rooms, a kitchen, or bathrooms could be arranged later. As he exited the cabin, a dull thud echoed as the cannons were hoisted onto the deck by the bone dragon. The entire aerial ship swayed for a moment. Fang Hao looked at the cannons and said to the blacksmith Colin beside him, "Find a way to secure the cannons firmly onto the ship." Colin nodded, "Understood, my lord." Earlier, Fang Hao wanted to test fire the cannons, but apparently, no one knew how to operate the flight ship. The plan to test fire would have to wait until later. After the inspection, Fang Hao climbed down the rope ladder. Seeing Angia and the maids below, full of anticipation, Fang Hao instructed, "Angia, take them up to have a look. Just look around, but please don't touch any equipment." "Sure thing." After speaking, Angia led a group of maids and earth spirit girls up the rope ladder. Soon, exclamations of surprise came from the deck above. Fang Hao showed a smile, then returned with Dimitrija and a few other heroes. On the way back, he consulted with Nelson about operating the aerial ship. The answer he received was, a technician. Chapter 876. A technician capable of assembling and repairing constructs. After dinner, Fang Hao opened the Book of Lords and found Zhang Bin's private chat. He went straight to the point, "That human technician, have you contacted him?" In the winter, a merchant had brought blueprints for constructs and an energy core to Zhang Bin's territory. At that time, Zhang Bin thought this was a way to acquire constructs, so he reached out to Fang Hao. He got news about the human technician from the merchant's mouth. He hadn't paid much attention to it before. Today, with the flight ship needing a technician, Fang Hao immediately thought of Zhang Bin. Soon, Zhang Bin replied, "I have contact, but he's a bit temperamental and not so easy to approach." "Not easy to approach?" Fang Hao stroked his chin. "To kill and convert?" The thought flashed through his mind, and he immediately shook his head. Although he didn't consider himself a good person, he also wouldn't deliberately do bad things. Changing one's principles for a moment's expedience wasn't the right thing to do. Fang Hao thought for a moment and said, "All right, got it, keep in touch with him. If he's difficult to approach, inquire if there's another way to recruit a technician." "Understood, boss." Zhang Bin agreed readily. Fang Hao continued to check the World Channel. Just like the last time, he sent out a request to purchase blueprints capable of recruiting technicians, but no one was selling blueprints. Instead, he received a bunch of private messages inviting him to join alliances, peddling other goods, selling their own portraits, and even suggesting offline meetings. All at once they appeared. Fang Hao had no choice but to block them again to avoid constant notification sounds. Having visited the Viscera Museum and chatted with Nelson later, as dusk fell, he lay down to rest. The next day, morning. After breakfast, Fang Hao took Dimitrija and Angia with him, once again heading to the No-01 Trade Alliance outpost. The route this time was also straightforward, to the Undead store. Without any stops along the way, he came straight to the front of the Undead store. He pushed the door open. Clang! The bell at the door rang with a crisp sound. The store wasn't dim, but today there were already customers inside. Imperial Tomb Guardian, Tier 8. 2 guards in heavy armor stood at the door. As Fang Hao and his group entered, with 2 swooshes, they drew their long blades from their waists. But the next second, the 2 guards were brought down by Dimitrija and Angia, pinned forcefully to the ground. At that moment, footsteps came from inside the store, and 2 skeleton clerks along with an undead holding a staff walked out. Seeing the scene before them, they were obviously taken aback. "Human sir, what's going on here?" asked the undead clerk in a soft voice. Fang Hao calmly replied, "I just entered the store, and they drew their swords on me. I reserve the right to explain this matter to the Trade Alliance outpost." "This." The 2 clerks looked back at the undead holding the staff. The staff-wielding undead glanced at Fang Hao and then carefully examined the heroes who had subdued his 2 subordinates. He spoke up, "Human, it seems there has been some misunderstanding, they pose no threat to you." Fang Hao nodded, patting Dimitrija on the shoulder. They released their hold, and the 2 undead guards quickly retreated to the side of the staff-wielding undead. Fang Hao then turned his attention to this undead. A high crown adorned his head, with a golden breastplate built in, wrapped in a dark green robe. On the crown and robe, besides symbols and patterns of the undead faith, there were also designs featuring elements like darkness and fire. In addition to the staff in his hand, he also held a black book. Not the Book of Lords, but likely a book of magic. Black Scourge Bequill, Orange Tier 9 Hero. Tier 9. One more step and he could become a Dark Gold level hero. Quite a fellow. The first hero he encountered here was already Orange Tier 9. Here to buy something, the undead Bequill asked abruptly. Fang Hao nodded, just looking around. Oh? What are you planning to buy? Bequill's tone was clearly curious. Bones, to see if there's any new stock. You're here to buy bones. Ah. I bought some last time, now I'm checking for any new stock. Ah, this. Undead Bequill looked at one of his clerks, who nodded, confirming that the human in front of him wasn't joking. Human, orc, and lizardman, these living creatures coming to the undead store to buy things. Times are changing too quickly. Afterwards, Bequill stopped speaking and stood by, observing as if he were picking out goods himself. Fang Hao looked around the first floor but didn't find what he wanted. So he went straight to the second floor. Bequill followed him upstairs. Fang Hao still couldn't find bones of a technician on the second floor, so he asked a nearby undead clerk, "Don't you have the bones of a technician?" The undead clerk replied, "Human sir, all goods are displayed on the counter. If it's not there, we don't have it. Can I place a pre-order or a custom order?" The undead clerk replied, "You can register your invitation card. If corresponding goods arrive, we will contact the trade alliance building in your territory." Fang Hao didn't have a better solution, so he nodded, took out his invitation card, and registered. He told them he wanted bones related to technicians. After registering, Fang Hao promptly left the undead store. Undead Bequill, who had remained inside the store, picked up the registration record and took a glance. Chapter 877. He asked, "What did he buy the last time?" One of the undead clerks replied, "He bought 2 sets of beast-type white bones and 1 set of human white bones." Interesting. Bequill's gaze followed the direction the three had left. After leaving the undead shop, Fang Hao and his companions continued to stroll around the trade alliance for a while. Seeing there wasn't much else to gain, they could only return to the city. Afternoon. Grey Iron City. The shooting range outside the research institute. Fang Hao looked at the revolver in his hand and nodded slightly. Under his constant pressure, the research institute of the dwarves had finally completed the revolver today. The revolver in his hand, however, was somewhat different from the revolvers commonly seen on television. It had a wooden grip and an elongated barrel. The length of the barrel was about 25 centimeters. Fang Hao found it a bit inconvenient holding such a long barrel in his hand. The advantage of a pistol is its convenience in carrying and the ability to quickly attack the target at critical moments. But such a long barrel would even interfere with walking if it were hung at the waist. "The barrel is this long?" Fang Hao asked. Cao Junming stepped forward, sounding tentative, "Boss, the technology there are some deficiencies in technology, so we lengthened the barrel to enhance accuracy." Fang Hao nodded, "How's the result?" "The result is quite good. The firing mechanism of a revolver is supposed to be simple among handguns." "Go test fire it," he said, passing the revolver to Cao Junming. "Oh, all right." Cao Junming took it and began to load the revolver. Then he entered the shooting range and pulled the trigger, aiming forward. Bang bang bang. 6 shots were fired, all 6 bullets discharged. 4 bullets hit the wooden target, and 2 landed on the ground. Among them, Cao Junming's skill level was probably a factor. Noticing that all 6 attempts at firing were successful, Cao Junming revealed a pleased expression. It seemed that even he didn't expect them to all work so well. Seeing Fang Hao looking at him, he immediately reined in his smile and hurriedly said, "Boss, the test firing is complete." Fang Hao nodded, "Good. It's great that those involved in this design and production did well. I will have Belarga reward you all for this." Upon hearing of a reward, the dwarves who had been bowing their heads immediately grew restless. Looking up, they could all see the joy on their mates' faces. They really were researchers, not prisoners. Prisoners wouldn't get such treatment for producing a finished product. Just as they were about to express their thanks, Fang Hao's next words made them stiffen. "In another week, I want to see a stable finished product, including stability and the feature of being easy to carry." This. Another week. Last week, Fang Hao had demanded to see a finished revolver, and they had been rushing the job day and night. Now, it was another week. But this time, no one tried to make excuses. They just watched silently as Fang Hao, accompanied by the high-ranking dwarves, left the research institute. Back in the main city, Fang Hao sat in the hall, still not forgetting to post messages twice on the World Channel to solicit blueprints from technicians. But the effect was no different than before. A bunch of private messages, all useless information, not a single one providing news about technicians. This left Fang Hao somewhat helpless. The aerial ship was still parked outside the city, and it had almost become a tourist attraction, with the maids playing on it every day. On several aerial ships, thin lines had been drawn up to hang clothes, and the deck was used for drying meat and vegetables. Apart from its proper use, every other possible use had been thoroughly explored. Ding! At that moment, the Book of Lords chimed with a notification. It was Li Rong. Fang Hao, Silver Wing City has made another pre-war deployment, in anticipation of an attack from the undead, she reported. Fang Hao frowned slightly. Yesterday was the fifth round of negotiations between the two sides. According to Li Rong's description, the talks had not been conclusive, but both parties were in a stalemate. Why did it suddenly seem like they were about to start a war? Has there been some kind of change? Fang Hao asked. Li Rong replied quickly, the specifics are unclear, but it seems Silver Wing City has received some information. The great cemetery of Odis is already prepared for battle. Chapter 878. All factions have their own intelligence channels. When the Federation learned about the danger in the great cemetery of Odis, it also began to focus on scouting information from the eastern borders, and obtaining some news was unsurprising. But such a significant change in just one day did startle Fang Hao. How's the situation over at the Federation? Fang Hao asked. Li Rong replied, today alone, the Hall of Justice, the Mage Association, and the Church held several meetings. Judging from the content of the talks and the expressions of those involved, the situation in the Federation isn't good. Food and equipment haven't been delivered, and reinforcements from the cities are still on their way. So, they say that if war were to break out now, Santor Fort would not withstand 3 days, and that's counting on a siege, Li Rong said. 3 days was even an overestimate for the undead. Once the undead chose not to attack Santor Fort but instead bypassed it and entered the Federation's territory directly, the danger to the other cities would increase even more. The undead don't need to eat or drink and naturally don't need to capture cities one by one to ensure logistics. So, the Federation must be terrified, right? Fang Hao continued. Terrified, especially the city lord of Santor Fort, his voice trembled when discussing these matters, Li Rong said. Fang Hao thought for a moment, then continued, if anything happens, ensure your safety first, then let me know to come and get you. Okay, I understand. After ending the call, Fang Hao stared pensively at the Book of Lords. The situation in the Great Cemetery and the Federation was progressing faster than he had anticipated. He had thought that the standoff and discussions would drag on for months. War seemed likely by summer. But now, it seemed that the previous troop deployments in the Great Cemetery were targeting the 100 Cities Federation. Perhaps the war would start sooner than expected. And the entire Federation would be dragged into this war. Sitting in his chair, he pondered for a while. It still seemed better to notify the gold-eating Queen Amanda of this message. He called for Dimitrija, activated the teleportation screen, and the two disappeared into the light. The Cold Blood Castle Hall. Ha! Stretching her slender legs, she yawned, why are you here again? Meanwhile, the gold-eating Queen Amanda, sitting securely in her seat, held the golden scepter in her hand. Yet her gaze was directed toward the newly arrived pair. Fang Hao sat down beside them and directly said, I just received intelligence from Odis, I've come to discuss it with you. Rolina showed no change, but Amanda sat up a bit. Fang Hao continued, Odis and the Federation had 5 rounds of negotiations that all ended in failure, and just now news came from the human side that Odis will soon launch an attack, and the humans are also preparing for combat. So soon? Rolina said in surprise, lowering her legs. Amanda, an undead, also showed a surprised expression. Neither had expected Odis would plan to attack so soon. Fang Hao noted their reactions. He continued, I came here to see what you think. Amanda pondered for a moment and then spoke, although Odis' actions have begun much earlier than we anticipated, the overall plan hasn't changed at all. Once Odis engages with the Federation, we can directly enter the territory of the Great Cemetery and take back the lands we lost. Fang Hao nodded. This indeed had no impact on the overall plan. He thought about the information Li Rong had shared with him. He added, another point is to ensure that the Federation can hold and tie down Odis's forces, otherwise letting them breach into the Federation would pose a significant danger. War was a nutrition supplement for the undead, allowing them time to transform. Their forces would keep growing until they exhausted the enemy. Thus, eliminating Odis's forces and avoiding giving them a chance to recuperate was crucial. What? Can't the humans hold back? Amanda asked. Fang Hao scoffed, peace has made humans forget the threat of the enemy. The city lord stationed at Santor Fort lacks competence, and the city defenses are a mess. The artillery on the walls is still being repaired, and with the winter just over, there's a shortage of food. Anyway, the intelligence from the Federation is, they can hold back the army for 3 days. 3 days, that's short. Fang Hao thought for a moment, then continued, well, since the Federation has realized this, they should soon make arrangements. After all, the scale of the 100 Cities Federation is there, as long as time permits, supplies and weapons can be supported. The nobles of the Federation, each one immensely wealthy, lived lives of silk and luxury. The threat of the undead, obviously, worried and frightened them the most. They would surely use every possible means to mobilize all available resources to resist the undead's attack. What they needed to consider was how to quickly win the battles on their own front. Amanda continued, the routes and maps are already problem-free and won't affect the combat. Fang Hao nodded, adding, yes, I'm not worried about the combat side of things, but after it ends, how to ease relations with the Federation still needs to be considered. Chapter 879. The Blood Clan and the Federation have a peace treaty, and when Rolina steps forward to express her stance, it should help to ease the situation between the two sides. With her legs crossed and yawning, Rolina's body stiffened, and her beautiful eyes widened, unsure of how the conversation had suddenly turned to her. What treaty, and when was it signed? Signed by the Red Duke. Damn it. The group chatted for a while, discussing possible problems and the subsequent mediation between the two powers, analyzing everything. Though the content wasn't extensive, the conversation still lasted quite some time. They had agreed on strategies for solvable issues and currently, there seemed to be no good solution for the unsolvable ones. So the discussion was temporarily put on hold. Next, the group walked out of the hall to inspect the defense arrangements on the city walls. By now, the walls were already equipped with a massive number of cannons and defensive machinery. Standing on the ramparts and looking in the direction of the Great Cemetery, one could see groups of patrolling skeleton soldiers silently carrying out their duties. The arrangements made by Amanda truly bolstered the defenses of Blood Castle. After staying here for a while, Fang Hao and another returned to the main city. Over the next 2 days, Li Rong kept sending updates non-stop. The tension between both sides' forces was rising rapidly. All important officials and their families within the Santire stronghold were taken into protective custody by the Hall of Justice's army to prevent escape attempts. The entire city was under control, making it virtually impossible to leave at this point. Starting from today, Li Rong and Su Hade also became busy. They used the trading function of the Book of Lords to exchange various resources. Since each trade had a limit, the two transmigrators didn't need to do anything else but sit there and trade. The continuous arrival of supplies somewhat reassured the people in the city. The morale of the human clan had bounced back from the previous few days. Fang Hao sat on the white bone throne, looking through the long string of messages and complaints sent by Li Rong. The attached picture showed a dilapidated warehouse surrounded by various resources. In the picture, one could also see part of Morse's body, with his purple skin being quite eye-catching. Tap tap tap. At that moment, crisp footsteps could be heard at the doorway. Looking up, Fang Hao saw the skeleton merchant Dijin walking in at a leisurely pace. With a slight bow, he said, "My lord, it's time for you to attend the auction." Today was the day of the Trade Alliance's auction event. Although Dijin would not be going along, he had specially come to remind Fang Hao not to miss the time. "All right, I'll head over now," Fang Hao said as he closed the Book of Lords and stood up to descend. Nelson, Angia and Dimitrija were already waiting at the door. There was a limited number of people allowed to attend the auction. And with no work at hand, Fang Hao decided to take the scholarly Nelson with him. If he encountered any auction items he wasn't familiar with, he could consult Nelson for advice. "My lord," they all saluted. Fang Hao nodded, "Let's go." After speaking, he led the group towards the bright screen of the Trade Alliance's teleportation array. Passing through the screen of the teleportation array, they arrived at the Trade Alliance's 01 station. As soon as they stepped out of the screen, they were greeted by a cacophony of voices. "Wow, it's really lively today," Angia exclaimed with wide eyes. Unlike the previous visit, the smooth and clean roads were crowded with people coming to the auction. Human clan, elves, orcs, the undead. At a glance, the crowd was filled with various races, all dressed in luxurious, high society attire. It gave off the feeling of visiting a tourist spot on a holiday, where all you could see was a sea of people. Fang Hao also nodded in agreement. He had underestimated the Trade Alliance's auction. "So it's this popular. Let's go, we'll probably have to queue up at the entrance," Fang Hao said. He led the group forward. There was no need to ask directions for the auction, huge signboards had been set up all around. Even without looking at the signs, simply following the crowd would lead them straight to the auction. Following the throng of people. Along the way, not only could they see heroes from various races, but they also saw scantily clad female figures. For example, a sea tribe woman in front of them, wearing a light blue gossamer dress that was almost transparent. A white temptress demon in a black leather outfit with a black heart marking at the tail. A demon? Demons can attend the auction, too. Fang Hao quietly asked the nearby Nelson. Nelson continued walking, calmly replying, "Demons are naturally not welcome by goblins, but the white temptress demon is lawful neutral and recognized by goblins. However, most races still shun them. In this world, demons were despised even more than dogs. Every appearance of demons brought disaster to all races, so even neutral goblins, acceptable to all races, still rejected demons. But the white temptress demon was not included in this. They had long left the abyss to live in this land as lawful neutrals, gaining goblin recognition. This acceptance was only among goblins, and despite the charm of the white temptress demon, they still faced rejection from all races. Of course, this situation would soon change. As transmigrators grew in strength, this alluring race with long legs and curvy figures would presumably become very popular. What demons or no demons? They are special military units. After listening to Nelson's explanation, Fang Hao nodded. "Ah, I see." Perhaps sensing something, a white temptress demon in the crowd ahead turned to look back towards them. Chapter 880. His gaze swept over a few people before settling on Fang Hao. Then, a seductive wink was thrown his way, causing an involuntary stir in his heart. Fang Hao didn't respond, curious why the other party would look his way when the distance between them made conversation seemingly impossible. Could it be that his gaze had been noticed? Possibly. The location of the auction was in the central area. It was a huge grey castle. The grey walls were covered with various symbols, which looked like a kind of complex and luxurious pattern. The entrance to the auction was already crowded with people. They were divided into 5 areas, lining up in long queues, gradually entering inside. Coincidentally, right in front of Fang Hao and his group was the scantily clad white temptress demon, its heart-shaped tail swaying continuously. The white temptress demon that had just winked at Fang Hao glanced sideways with a smile on her lips. Her heart-shaped tail swayed gently, unintentionally brushing against the men behind her. Fang Hao stepped back a bit to avoid the swaying tail. The white temptress demon, measuring her head, looked back at the young man behind her. Her brows furrowed slightly, seemingly not quite satisfied with the man's reaction. Just as she wanted to speak, a voice came from nearby. "Mr. Fule, is that you?" Fang Hao looked to the side and saw a foreign man in fancy noble attire with gold chains over his clothes, curiously watching him. Weighty. The foreigner from the last meeting who was in league with the Grey Dwarves. At that time, Fang Hao had introduced himself as Fule, uncertain whether Weighty was even using his real name. His gaze landed on the queue opposite, and sure enough, he found the Grey Dwarves. In contrast to the splendidly dressed Weighty, the Grey Dwarves were dressed rather simply. Dark pants, grey shirts, bare strong muscles, while touching their thick beards, they chatted away. It seemed Weighty had taken the Grey Dwarves along to broaden their horizons. "Mr. Weighty, I didn't expect to meet you here again," Fang Hao said with a smile. "Yes, I knew you would definitely come," Weighty said, glancing behind him. He saw Dimitrija, then the undead. "Hey? Another orange hero, and an undead?" But he didn't pay much attention, as there were many people in the queue, and he didn't seem to think they were together. Fang Hao asked, the dwarves are selling quite some good stuff this time, aren't they? Dwarves have a significant presence, with branches in various regions. This time, the Grey Dwarves' successful entry was only for orange machinery. The purple battle axes were returned during the evaluation, Wadey replied directly. Perhaps the two had become familiar. Wadey was quite willing to provide him insights regarding the dwarves. Oh, being able to sell some machinery must be quite profit-making, Fang Hao agreed. Wadey nodded and lowered his voice. What about you guys? What did the lizardmen sell? Fang Hao glanced at Dimitrija, also lowering his voice. We are a small force, having nothing noteworthy. Last time, hearing about your sold machinery, we also scraped some equipment from our inventory for the auction. Both orange heroes, yet a small force. Wadey leaned in close. What kind of equipment? Are lizardmen also skilled in machinery? Fang Hao didn't hide anything. Cannons, dwarf technology, not quite up to your standard. Oh. I understand, Wadey immediately nodded. Acquired on the battlefield, seemingly planning to sell it using this opportunity. The two whispered, exchanging information with a tacit understanding. Before long, Wadey's attention was once again drawn to something in the back. Yes, Aragon. Aragon? Why does that name sound so familiar? In an instant, Fang Hao remembered where he had seen that name. Ranking list, World Number 2? Chapter 881. Following Wadey's gaze, Fang Hao saw several people approaching from behind. 2 men and 1 woman, all 3 dressed in exceptionally lavish attire, among whom 1 man and 1 woman had curved horns pointing backward on their heads. Having encountered Spencer previously, Fang Hao could confirm. These were not the horns of orcs or demons, but dragon horns. The other person was the Aragon Wadey had mentioned, who appeared to be around 30 years old, with golden hair combed back. Blue pupils and deep eye sockets, he had the standard handsome European man's appearance. In the world rankings announced by the system, Fang Hao was the top in 3 lists, and in the lists for territory and military strength, Aragon was stably in 2nd place. He's Aragon. Fang Hao was also somewhat surprised. If he wasn't ranked 2nd with Dragon Clan members by his side, that would truly be questionable. Wadey nodded and said, haven't you seen the World Channel? He's even come forward to recruit members for his own alliance. Well, Fang Hao usually didn't turn on the World Channel until at night when he checked if anyone was selling blueprints. He seldom opened the channel at other times, mainly because he was busy with many tasks during the day. Are those with him from the Dragon Clan? Fang Hao continued. Yes, Aragon's territory is in the region ruled by the Dragon Clan. I heard that he recently changed his faction to the Dragon Clan faction. His troops are bound to be impressive, and surpassing Fang Hao as the first is probably just a matter of time, Wadey said with a gaze full of envy. Fang Hao didn't say much, his eyes also turned to the other party. This second-ranked Aragon had a tall and firm build, with a pleasing face as well. He had the look of the main hero in European films. Now aligned with the Dragon Clan, he was sure to be esteemed by many transmigrators. But the claim that he would surpass himself made Fang Hao somewhat unconvinced. Millions of troops spread across the hills, nearly 100,000 wriggling spines in the warehouse, and you say surpass just like that? In a blink, Fang Hao saw Wadey, who had just been chatting with him, had already moved to the back of the team. And struck up a conversation with that second-ranking Aragon. This Wadey, quite a sociable one. After chatting for a while, Wadey came back and handed a piece of paper to Fang Hao. Upon opening it, he saw Aragon's name written in English. An autograph. I got one for you too, maybe it can be sold for a good price when he gets famous, Wadey explained. Fang Hao took it, thought for a moment, and tucked it into his pocket. Those 2 from the Dragon Clan, what level of heroes are they? Fang Hao asked. Orange ones, they're all orange ones, Wadey said, folding the autograph carefully, and continued, that's the level of the second. I wonder if Fang Hao has any orange heroes. Should have. The team slowly moved forward during their conversation. Aside from the Dragon Clan members and Aragon behind them, more transmigrators with the Book of Lords along with some natives joined the queuing lineup. Humans, elves, and members of the Sea tribe all had transmigrators by their sides. However, Fang Hao did not see anyone he recognized from his own region. It seemed as if he had been the only one to receive an invitation. Or perhaps the crowd was too large to notice anyone. As the team moved forward bit by bit, Wadey returned to the Grey Dwarf's side and quickly entered the castle where the auction was held. A short while later, it was Fang Hao and his party's turn. "Sir, please present your invitation card." At the entrance, a respectful male human clan member spoke. Fang Hao took out the black invitation card and showed it to the attendant. After a brief inspection, the attendant said, "Sir, you have items in this auction, you may go to the private room on the second floor, please enter." He returned the invitation card to Fang Hao with a gesture of invitation. Fang Hao nodded and entered with his companions. The male elf was somewhat taken aback by the sight of the others coming in behind them, orcs, lizardmen, and undead. What a combination! Upon entering the Great Hall, Fang Hao and his companions were once again reminded of the Trade Alliance's wealth. He had seen the Dwarven Royal Palace and the Federation's Parliament Hall, but they paled in comparison to the splendid auction hall before him. Cloud white stone materials, green gold magic devices, and an overall design that integrated seamlessly with the hall. It wasn't just decorative, it served its purpose too. The entire space of the castle was hollowed out, filled with magic arrays and magic technology emitting dazzling light. Merging gold, cloud white, and deep green into the entire space. Displaying a beauty of extreme luxury. Hard to believe that goblins would have such high taste. Fang Hao and his party, led by staff, took the elevator. And directly entered a private room on the second floor. The area of the private room was not large, but the location was excellent, offering a high vantage point over the entire auction proceedings. After the staff gave a brief demonstration of the bidding process, they left the room, leaving Fang Hao and his companions alone. The most up-to-date novellas are published on Fruitnoelo. The room was not very large, about 30 square meters in size. The 4 people sitting inside didn't feel cramped but couldn't call it spacious either. This was probably one of the reasons the Trade Alliance restricted the number of attendees. Dimitrija sat silently near the door, while Fang Hao and Nelson chatted softly about some of the unusual races they had encountered along the way. Angia had already begun to devour the complimentary pastries provided in the room. Soon, at 10 a.m., the auction officially started with the arrival of the host. She was a tall, mature, and beautiful elf clan woman. Chapter 882. After a simple opening, the first auction item was presented directly. A Sea tribe woman with long blue hair walked up, carrying a tray. She lifted the red silk cloth covering it to reveal a golden necklace. The host began, "Emperor Leoxis's gold necklace possesses a strong amplification of magic, and each time a spell is cast, it will summon a magic elemental attendant of the same type as the spell, to join the fight." Wow! As soon as these words were spoken, a noisy clamor erupted from beneath the stage. Items from Emperor Leoxis are up for auction, really? The very first item is of this caliber? The quality of this year's auction is so high. I never thought I'd hear the name of Emperor Leoxis in my lifetime. Which power is selling this? They were actually able to acquire it, it wasn't dug up, was it? SHH. Don't talk nonsense. Emperor Leoxis was once a legendary mage emperor. After his death, all the artifacts he had used quickly vanished from people's sight. Over 100 years have passed, and one could hardly see any items related to that emperor surface anymore. As the saying goes, rare is precious, whether it's for collection or functionality. All of Emperor's items are worth bidding for. They are ardently sought after by various powers. The beautiful auctioneer looked down at the discussing crowd with a smile, seemingly very satisfied with her opening. She had roused everyone's attention and eagerness. Only when she felt the atmosphere was sufficiently warm did she gently clap her hands and continue through the amplifier. Starting bid, 15 million warfire coins, with each subsequent bid increasing by no less than 1 million. The price was indeed astonishing. 15 million, simply unbelievable. However, after the shock, bidding quickly started from the 3rd floor. It was followed by people from the 4th and 5th floors, as the bidding began to rise rapidly. Fang Hao sat in the private room, somewhat surprised by the price of the first auction item. His orange cannon had a low asking price of 5 million, and a buyout price of only 8 million, while someone's necklace reached a starting bid of 15 million. However, this necklace had some unique abilities. In addition to bolstering magic, it automatically summoned a magic attendant of the same elemental type as the spells cast by its wearer. For warriors, this necklace was useless. But for mages, and those races naturally capable of casting spells, this was a divine artifact. Moreover, it was an irreplicable divine artifact. Thinking it through, it indeed seemed right that it should be more expensive than machinery. Fang Hao also thought about joining the bidding. After all, as a mage, it would be useful for him. But upon hearing the relentless soaring of the price, he felt it was better to let it go. It was just one piece of equipment, his advantage wasn't in spells and combat, but in hundredfold augmentation. In the end, a guest from the 4th floor's private room acquired the item for 32 million. The rest of the guests were left somewhat dumbfounded by then. Goodness, people upstairs really were rolling in money. The very first item sold for over 30 million. Weren't they afraid of losing out on better items later on? The first item concluded. The beautiful auctioneer clapped her hands softly once more, then adjusted her skirt at just the right moment to reveal a pair of fair legs. This drew all the guests' gazes back to her. The auctioneer continued, "Congratulations to the guest on the 4th floor for obtaining this coveted item, our staff will deliver it to your private room, so please be patient." Having finished, she looked down. "Next, please welcome the second item." This time, a human clan beauty came up, pushing a small cart. The auctioneer lifted the red cloth on the cart to reveal a pile of cloth strips enclosed in glass. The cloth strips were blackened and yellowed, although well preserved, they didn't seem to be anything valuable. From Fang Hao's first impression, they looked like rotten strips taken from a mummy. The staff member, pushing the cart on the stage, showcased it to the guests from all directions. The auctioneer went on to say, "These are the wrappings of the immortal emperor. In addition to nourishing the soul fire of the undead, they help living creatures to evade death. In simple terms, after being wrapped with it, one can avoid the gaze of the death god." Before the crowd could erupt into discussion again, the auctioneer raised her voice and emphasized, "The caveat is that those who extend their lifespan will eventually become members of the immortal clan." As her words ended, the entire venue fell into a brief silence. Originally, this was an item of the costly variety, wrapped in a shroud, capable of evading the gaze of the death god and ultimately turning into a genuine undead. The whole venue was quiet, no one opened their mouths to speak. This wasn't because they weren't tempted, but rather because the relationship between the undead and living creatures was laid bare before them. Living creatures formed alliances to fight against the undead, your former teammates were present, and buying this item now could easily lead to suspicions about your intentions. At this time, in the public area on the 3rd floor, a female staff member raised her hand to signal. The auctioneer looked at her and nodded. The staff member on the 3rd floor said, "Becoming an undead, does the soul fire still exist?" This was a question on behalf of the guests in the private rooms. All the guests once again turned their attention to the auctioneer, to see whether the soul fire existed, which essentially asked whether a soul remained after becoming undead. To end up as a mindless skeleton was effectively no different from being dead. The auctioneer, with a smile, answered, "It possesses soul fire." He then continued, "The starting price is 50 million, with each bid not to be less than 5 million. The venue fell silent for a moment again. The price quickly soared and finally stopped at 80 million, bought by a guest on the 5th floor. The third item was a special sunflower butterfly emblem. The fourth item was an old rune scroll. The following auction items, variously shaped and with different functions, appeared one after another. Fang Hao watched each item, greatly surprised. But after the surprise faded, he lost much interest, as the prices soared sky high and weren't all that substantial for the development of his territory. Bang, bang, bang. There was a gentle knock on the door from inside the room. "Come in." The door opened, and a pretty female staff member entered. After bowing slightly, she said softly, "Sir, the next round will be the auction segment for materials, medicines, and equipment. The items you wish to sell will be auctioned off in this round." It was a notification about the sale of items. Fang Hao nodded, "All right, we got it." The staff member bowed again and then left the room. Indeed, what followed was the auction segment for bulk goods. The previous elf auctioneer had stepped down, and another young male auctioneer took his place and went up. The man was also extremely handsome, even somewhat androgynous. After smiling and bowing, he immediately began, "All right, please bring out the first group of auction items for this segment." A staff member, holding a brocade box, came up. When the brocade box was opened, it revealed a dawn blue coral, gradually shifting from light at the top to deep blue at the bottom. The coral, like a scattering of glistening droplets, was extraordinarily beautiful. The auctioneer said loudly, "Dawn blue coral, which not only holds collectible value but is also an essential material for special construction. There are a total of 50 clumps, all starting together, with a starting bid of 2,500,000, and each bid must not be less than 50,000. Different from the previous auctioneer, the male auctioneer's speech was more concise, devoid of giving others time to discuss or build the atmosphere. He started the bidding directly. 2,550,000. 2,600,000. The crowd began to bid, but it was clear that although the coral was beautiful, there weren't many bidders. Once the price was called to 2,800,000, only 2 people were left bidding against each other. Inside a private room on the 2nd floor, Fang Hao was flipping through the Book of Lords, confirming the materials listed there. When he confirmed the construction materials for the wishing well, including the dawn blue coral, his heart skipped a beat. No wonder these materials were so difficult to collect. Turns out they were worthy of being auctioned, naturally they couldn't be bought like ordinary high-grade goods. Below, the price remained at 2,900,000. The auctioneer maintained his professional smile. Dawn blue coral 2,900,000 for the first time. Dawn blue. He had only said half of the second call when the light in the 2nd floor private room lit up. The auctioneer immediately corrected himself. 2nd floor guest bids 2,995,000. Chapter 883. All the people on the 1st floor looked up towards the 2nd floor at the same time. No one was surprised, nor did anyone reveal any special expression. After glancing up, they continued to turn back and discuss with the people next to them. More races still live on the land, so buildings related to the sea are quite rare. Additionally, with such a high price, 80% of the people had already been eliminated. The remaining people had raised the price to 2.9 million, and it was difficult to increase it further. Fang Hao added another 50,000, and then no one else in the audience made a bid. Instead, they looked towards the private room with curious eyes. They speculated that the people inside the room must also be affiliated with the Sea Tribe, otherwise they wouldn't spend so much money to purchase the blue coral. Did you just lose out? Angia sensed the odd atmosphere and asked. Fang Hao thought for a moment, possibly. 2.95 million for the first time. 2.95 million for the second time. 2.95 million for the third time, sold. The auctioneer directly banged the gavel, confirming the final price. Immediately thereafter, without any delay, the next auction item was introduced. The second item was a type of fruit from the elf clan, and the third was 50 bottles of high-level potions. Both fetched good prices. Thump, thump, thump. The door was knocked on again. The same staff member pushed the door open and entered again. Sir, madam, the item you bid on is ready. Would you like it delivered here to your private room or directly to your territory? If to the territory, the Trade Alliance will deliver it within 2 business days. Just bring it here, Angia replied. Very well, sir, the staff member stepped aside as someone brought in boxes one by one behind him. 50 ornate boxes were piled up in the center of the room, creating a small mountain. After everything was moved in, the staff member continued, Sir, here are the contact details the seller asked the Trade Alliance to provide you, hoping for future cooperation. Fang Hao took it and held it in his hand. It was a shell reminiscent of a business card, with Coral Cottage inscribed on it. The most up-to-date novellas are published on Fruit Noello. Is that the name of a shop? Fang Hao asked curiously. Yes, sir, Coral Cottage has a store to the west of the city, you might want to visit sometime, the staff member replied. Fang Hao looked at the shell and then leaned forward to get a closer look at the ample-bodied staff member. He continued to inquire, does the seller know the buyer's information? One of the benefits of the auction private room is its secrecy. Who bought what is unknown to anyone outside the Trade Alliance, unlike the seating on the 1st floor, where everyone's bids are clear. It's not that they're afraid of getting robbed. But more likely, your enemies might learn of your purchases and predict your next move based on what you bought. Now that the staff member had delivered the business card, Fang Hao feared his information had already been leaked. The staff member quickly explained, No, sir, sellers may leave their contact details with the Trade Alliance, and when the item is sold, the Trade Alliance will deliver it along with the goods to the buyer without revealing your information. With this explanation, Fang Hao understood. It meant that the shell business card had been given to the Trade Alliance in advance, and it would be handed over to the buyer along with the coral. This was also a marketing strategy. Had he known such a method existed, Fang Hao would have left his information as well, that way, anyone buying machinery could also contact him. All right, I understand now, thank you for your efforts. It's my duty, sir. After bowing again, the staff member exited. This delay caused several auction items to pass by. Fang Hao kept an eye out, but they were all items he couldn't use. Still, it was evident that the trade alliance was reliable in selling items. Until now, there hadn't been any slow or unsold situations. Even less popular items were sold, and the popular ones almost started fights. The business was exceptionally booming. On the stage, the auctioneer continued, "All right, let us welcome the next item." This time, the staff brought in a small model of the 5-tube windpipe cannon. They certainly didn't bring the actual heavy 5-tube windpipe cannon onto the stage. 5-tube windpipe cannon, a total of 300 pieces, sold in sets of 10 with each set starting at 50 million, with bids increasing by no less than 500,000 each time, the auctioneer announced loudly. The hall once again became noisy. 300 pieces, are the dwarves that strapped for cash this year? Is there a war coming, with so many weapons entering the market? I really don't know what means the trade alliance used to get the dwarves to release so many cannons. Meanwhile, in a private room on the second floor occupied by the Grey Dwarves. What's happening? Who has broken the rules and released so many weapons? Have they lost their minds? Humph! It must be some other city-states selling them, they are greedier than dragons. When we get back, I'm reporting this to the Alliance, let those guys pay the price, one of the Grey Dwarves said, his chest heaving with fury. The windpipe cannons were already challenging to produce due to their technical complexity, resulting in limited production. This year, with the inclusion of the Transmigrator, the dwarves' armaments had increased somewhat, but sales were limited by the rules of the Dwarf Alliance. It was unknown which city-state had sold extra, which not only drove down the overall prices but also made them feel they had lost out. Therefore, each was seething with anger. Meanwhile, Wadey, who was nearby, nodded with a smile while wiping the sweat from his forehead. At that moment, he had some conjectures in mind. Chapter 884. The dwarves had already agreed to sell 200 windpipe cannons, which was a done deal. Now there were suddenly 100 more appearing out of nowhere. They couldn't be from Fule and his group, could they? Thinking back on the other party's reaction, as well as their demeanor when asking about what the dwarves were selling, it was almost certain it was them who sold these cannons. If the Grey Dwarves found out that because he mentioned the windpipe cannons, the others decided to sell theirs, he would inevitably be punished. As he mulled it over, sweat began to bead even more on his forehead. He must keep them from finding out, at all costs. The crowd discussed animatedly. The bidding price was already skyrocketing. Dwarven machinery, especially the windpipe cannon, was popular among all races. The number of bidders was naturally high. Soon, the last set was up for sale, and the price was even higher than before, the bidding fiercer. 75,550,000. 76 million. Damn it, 80 million. There is a ceiling price for bulk sale items. This is also taking into account that the Trade Alliance stores are also selling them, and they are not the sole product available. Now that the bidding had reached 80 million, it had hit the buyout price, and there was no need to continue the auction. 80 million sold, the last set of windpipe cannons goes to the fifth floor guest, the auctioneer announced as he brought down the gavel. Ah! So close. If only I'd gone straight to the buyout price. What a pity, what a pity. Audible sighs of regret came from the guests below and some in the private boxes. They were extremely disappointed about not winning the bid. The auctioneer smiled slightly and continued, to those guests who did not win the bid, don't feel regretful. There are many more items to come in the auction, and eventually there will be something just right for you. All right, enough talk, let's bring on the next set of items. The model for the 5-tube windpipe cannons was taken away, and another staff member stepped up. The red cloth was lifted, revealing the shimmering scales underneath. With a grand gesture, the auctioneer announced, Dragon scales, 100 pieces, usable in crafting armors and protective gear, and as material for special alchemical items, starting price. Dragon scales belonged to the dragon breed of Dragon Clan, specifically the appearance of bone dragons prior to death, not the titled heroes of the Dragon Clan. Even so, only the Dragon Clan could offer dragon scales for sale at an auction. Any other race, even if they had dragon scales, wouldn't dare to sell them, and the Trade Alliance would not accept them either. The Dragon Clan, known for their physical prowess, were notoriously unreasonable. No one wanted to provoke the Dragon Clan over such a trivial matter. Fierce bidding commenced below, but Fang Hao did not participate. Previously, he had obtained dragon scales and dragon blood after defeating Spencer. The dragon blood had been made into a potion, which Fang Hao had consumed, and the dragon scales were supposed to be made into armor by a craftsman, though there was yet no news of it. Besides, his own dragon scales were from a heroic member of the dragon clan, not at all comparable to those of a mere bone dragon. Ignoring the ongoing auction outside, the staff once again knocked on the door. Several staff members entered, each carrying 2 leather cases. "Sir, this is the sum from the items you sold tonight." Case after case was placed on the table and opened. Inside each leather case, neat stacks of warfire cards lay, as orderly as poker chips. The lead staff member swallowed nervously before continuing, "Sir, after deducting the 5% fee, here we have 60,000 warfire cards with a denomination of 10,000 each, 7 of 1,000, and 3 of 100. Fang Hao nodded, "Okay, leave them here." "Yes, sir. If you need anything, you can call me at any time," the staff member said, widening her eyes and suggestively batting her lashes. Fang Hao did not respond, and the staff left with their colleagues. Looking at the stacks of cash boxes in front of him, even Nelson and the usually quiet Dimitrija were somewhat stunned. Reaping so many warfire cards in one go was indeed a major gain. Others attended the auction to spend money, yet here Fang Hao had earned a large sum. The auction continued afterward. The third session auctioned off orange-rated weapons and armor, as well as goblin-crafted orange constructs. Throughout the room, they sold for a handsome price. The fourth session escalated the quality to dark gold level items out for bid. Fang Hao saw a dark elf cloak, an undead bone lyre, and a demigod war halberd, all dark gold rated equipment. The bidding crowd had narrowed to a contest between the 4th and 5th floors, with the prices reaching terrifying figures. Fang Hao did not partake, indeed, he could not compete. He still held to the old notion that 1 or 2 high-quality items could not change the overall strength of a domain. His strategy still relied on numbers. The auction came to an end with the auctioneer's words of thanks. Glancing at his watch, it was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The auction had been running since the morning, straight through to the afternoon. Moreover, item after item was sent up for bidding without any break in between. The trade alliance's auctions were indeed of high quality. Not in a hurry to leave, Fang Hao took stock of his gains this time. Besides the warfire card obtained from selling the cannon, the items he had acquired at the auction included 50 clusters of dawn blue coral, 20 bottles of piercing spirit medicine, and a set of manganese steel gloves, orange. 3 categories of items in total. Among them, piercing spirit medicine was a kind of potion that could enhance one's comprehension during training and offered the chance to grasp new skills. It was a very good potion, and since Fang Hao saw that the competition for price wasn't too fierce, and many people in his own territory needed this kind of potion, he simply bought it outright. The manganese steel gloves were purchased for Engia. Combat-related equipment was a niche category in the market, and he had always wanted to get Engia something with better attributes. This time, upon encountering it, he bought it straight away. The blue tiger's claw that used to hang from her slender waist had been swapped out for these spiked gloves. The only regret was that no blueprints appeared at this auction. Blueprints for the energy core production building and for recruiting craftsmen were not acquired. This meant he had to start thinking of other solutions. Seeing that it was about time, Fang Hao and his companions also stood up to leave. They opened the door, and there weren't many guests left on the 2nd floor, most had already departed. The group made their way straight to the magic-powered elevator to wait for the ride down. Very soon, the elevator doors opened, and there were already 3 people standing inside. One of them was a familiar figure. A blonde, dashing man. Aragon. The world's 2nd-ranked Aragon was also in the elevator, seemingly intending to head downstairs. Standing beside Aragon were 2 members of the Dragon clan, a male and a female hero. The man had red hair and dragon horns atop his head, dressed in a dark red brocade robe that looked bulky, probably because he was wearing some sort of armor underneath. The woman, who appeared to be about 18 or 19, had snow-white skin with a subtle luster, silver long hair, and small dragon horns on top of her head like freshly sprouted bamboo shoots. She was in a black dress embroidered with golden threads, her figure accentuating a solid and shapely form contrary to her youthful appearance. Silver Moon Spear Beata, Orange Rank 9. Dragon Lord Ashburn, Orange Rank 3. Hey? Fang Hao paused, initially taking the pair for father and daughter. But upon closer inspection, this young female dragon turned out to have a higher rank than the middle-aged male dragon. She had reached Orange Rank 9, on par with the fairy clan's heart of the deep forest Shinesera. Just one step away from advancing to a dark gold hero. On the other hand, the middle-aged man with an orange title seemed more like a hero that had emerged from a military rank advancement. Fang Hao stood at the doorway, observing the interior. Aragon, the transmigrator inside the elevator, was now gaping in surprise. He, too, had discerned the attributes of the four individuals outside two heroes, both orange-ranked. Furthermore, they were from different factions. This left him puzzled about their identities. He speculated whether the transmigrator was following one of the orange heroes. If so, then the other hero might likely be his own. Just as this thought came to Aragon's mind, he immediately dismissed it. How could that be? He was ranked second in the world and only had one purple-ranked hero in his territory. How could he possibly have an orange-ranked hero? Could it be that they were not together, merely leaving in each other's company? Possible. Do you want to come in? The silver-haired lady, lifting her head, asked. Her voice was quite similar to that of an ordinary human, and very melodious. Oh, sure. Fang Hao and his group stepped inside, taking up positions on either side of the other three, all remaining silent. The elevator doors closed slowly, muting the noise from the outside world. At that moment, the silver-haired girl suddenly furrowed her brows, sniffing the air lightly. Then, she abruptly turned towards Fang Hao. She spoke in a cold voice, "Hey! Have you drunk dragon blood?" Chapter 885. The words of the silver-haired girl made Fang Hao and the others' hearts suddenly tighten. The Dragon Clan is famously protective due to their racial population issues. They are so protective that they can become unreasonable. Every force that has acted against the Dragon Clan has faced the collective retaliation of the entire race. That is why all races respect the Dragon Clan from a distance. Even if they hit you and you hit back and injure them, you will still be retaliated against. Fang Hao looked at the girl, his face showing confusion as he asked, "Are you talking to me?" The silver-haired girl Beata, with her head held high, said, "You have drunk dragon blood, the kind that's a blended potion. Where did the dragon blood come from?" "Miss, you must be mistaken, I have not had any contact with the Dragon Clan." Beata's face suddenly turned cold, and she rebuked, "Humph! Seeking death." Before the sound of her voice faded, the silver-haired girl abruptly made her move. Her right hand clenched like a spear, fingers together, with streaks of thunderbolt, stabbing toward Fang Hao's jaw. Fang Hao, already on guard, dodged by turning his head and struck upward with his elbow at the striking hand. At the same time, Dimitrija, standing beside him, threw a punch, its wind howling as it headed for the girl's head. The middle-aged member of the Dragon Clan, trying to protect the silver-haired girl, had just launched his fist at the lizardman, when the whoosh of cleaving air reached his ears. He immediately abandoned his offensive and bent his arms to block. Angia spun around at the waist, her fist already rushing in. The middle-aged Dragon Clan's form swayed slightly, but he was unhurt. Seeking death. The middle-aged Dragon Clan roared in anger. Aragon, realizing what was happening too late, let out a roar and was about to throw a punch. Bang! A kick from nowhere sent someone flying into the air, crashing against the wall. Subsequently, a black magic missile flew in and exploded in the center. The attribute of dark magic caused the brightly lit elevator to suddenly darken. The explosion of the magic missile made 3 magic lamps burst, and the darkness eroded the walls, leaving pits of corrosion behind. In the elevator, only a single magic lamp remained, flickering on and off. In the confined space, everyone was entangled in a fight. Fist winds and leg shadows, engaging in a back-and-forth brawl. Bang bang bang! The metal bulkheads deformed, and the impact of the magic made the entire elevator shake. It also caused the last lit magic lamp to go out completely. The enclosed space was enveloped in darkness. The howl of fist winds, the clashes of lightning, fire, and dark magic continually collided in the space. The already narrow elevator began to swing like a pendulum, unsteady. In the lobby on the first floor. In front of the counter. The Grey Dwarf stood in front of the counter, angrily arguing with the teller, trying to find out who had sold an extra 100 cannons. Meanwhile, the transmigrator Wadey, after confirming that the trade alliance wouldn't divulge the seller's information, left it to the Grey Dwarfs to inquire. He was conversing and laughing with a wheat-skinned female transmigrator. "You're so beautiful, if you were in the human or elf clan's territory, you would have achieved much more," Wadey said with a smile. The female transmigrator smiled faintly. No way, the elf clan is the most beautiful race in this world, how could I compare to them? Wadey looked regretful. What a pity, to end up voicing your opinion in the desert of the undead, where your beauty is useless. Spurt? The woman chuckled, what's the use of being good looking? What's most important is ability. If I could reach the level of Fang Hao and Aragon, I could ensure my own safety. Wadey nodded. Aragon also came to attend the auction, did you see him? No, what does he look like? Wadey immediately replied, very handsome, dressed much better than us, and accompanied by 2 heroes of the Dragon clan. I feel if it came down to a real fight, he would be stronger in combat power than Fang Hao. Really? Fang Hao's points are several times higher than the second place. Of course. The Dragon clan is the most powerful race, and Aragon just recently changed his allegiance to the Dragon clan a few days ago. All the troops he recruits from now on will be related to the Dragon clan. Defeating Fang Hao shouldn't be a problem, Wadey said with conviction. The woman nodded after hearing this. From what you say, it does seem possible. Points don't represent combat power. Exactly. Just as the two were talking, a loud boom suddenly came from the floors above. All the people looked up in terror. They saw the descending elevator suddenly explode with a bang, and then the flat metallic elevator emitted explosion after explosion. The smooth surface of the elevator bulged with marks, as if some beast inside was trying to hammer through the iron walls to break free from its cage. People below cried out in shock and started to clear away quickly. Staying far away, they continued to watch the commotion. The staff shouted loudly, "There's a fight inside, go call the stationed commander." Upon hearing this, onlookers were shocked. Fighting at the Trade Alliance's auction house was tantamount to having a death wish. Some went to call the guards, while the elevator, accompanied by the shrill sound of rending metal, became increasingly ragged. The entire elevator began to sway violently, dislodging from its tracks in midair. Under severe swaying, bang! The cables on top snapped, and the entire elevator plummeted. Boom! Upon the loud crash, the elevator hit the ground, and its doors burst open. Several figures charged out, with thunderbolt, explosions, and dragon roar filling the entire lobby, leaving all present dumbfounded. Among the dust, a figure slowly emerged. Struggling to crawl out while gasping for breath, he said, "It's Aragon!" Wadey exclaimed in shock. Chapter 886. The woman beside him cast a questioning glance, and Wadey said to the disheveled figure crawling out, "That's Aragon. Isn't he from the Dragon clan? Who's fighting with the Dragon clan?" The woman exclaimed in surprise. Wadey frowned, then focused his gaze on the two sides continuously striking each other in the midst of the dust, his eyes suddenly widening. "Foulée?" The hall was filled with dust. The silver-haired girl was surrounded by flashes of thunderbolt, her gaze sweeping over the 4 people opposite, her voice icy. "Dragon scales showing beneath the skin is a sign of having taken the demon dragon potion, what more is there to say?" Fang Hao shook his head, also looking at the girl. "So what if I have?" As they spoke, Fang Hao took out weapons, distributing them among the others. Dimitrija, even less talkative. With long sword in hand, he dragged out a golden afterimage on the spot. Using brute physical strength, he shot up and slashed at the middle-aged man from the Dragon clan. Dimitrija, a man of few words, knew that Lizardman had no connection with the Dragon clan in this world. Both as orange heroes, marked by the Lizardman, he didn't dare take the attack head-on and moved to dodge. However, the middle-aged man felt a tightness around his ankle, as the white jade stone tiles on the ground flipped up, and the soil below, like mud, encased his ankles. More and more mud crawled upward, like a huge hand, dragging him down fiercely. It was just such a delay. The Lizardman's sword light was already upon him. With no escape, the middle-aged man made a snap decision, bending slightly, his back meeting the slashing blade. Clang! The sword cut through the brocade robe, revealing the glittering gold of the inner armor beneath. Whoosh! At that moment, the girl's silver lance thrust toward the skeleton, Nelson, in the rear. Nelson hurriedly dodged as the mud under the middle-aged man's feet began to crumble, starting to counterattack the Lizardman. Angia took the opportunity to quickly close in on the silver-haired girl, attempting to engage her at close quarters again. Fang Hao followed closely behind, his hands also conjuring a thunderbolt spear, hurling it directly at the silver-haired girl. The thunderbolt spear was blocked by an invisible energy in front of the girl, who at the same time stretched out her fair arm, pointing to the sky, and in an instant, multitudes of lightning strikes descended from above. Silver serpents spread across the ground, the earth and stones exploded. Dimitrija's feet feigned, altering course abruptly during the attack, aiming to strike down the girl. The middle-aged man of the dragon clan spat out a red fireball, launching it at the skeleton, the corpse which, behind him, while Nelson raised a thick earth wall in front for defense. A silver thunder snake emerged from behind, biting towards Fang Hao's groin. Fang Hao turned and swung his thunder god's blade, chopping the thunder snake to pieces. At the same time, the magic he was concentrating on accelerated once more, and a double-headed fire python appeared in the center, breathing fireballs at the two opposite. Combined attack, shifting targets midway. The 6 individuals ceaselessly sought methods to attack and defend. The scene was pure chaos. Figures shuttled through the dust, with roars of thunder and fire echoing. The once magnificent hall was no longer recognizable, the wreckage still being ravaged. Fang Hao hurled another thunderbolt spear, his expression turning somewhat grim. Of the 4 on his side, only Dimitrija could truly contend with the Dragon Clan. Nelson was a support-type hero, his abilities and traits resided in knowledge and crafting undead, not combat. While Angia and Fang Hao did possess some combat power. Compared to the Dragon Clan, they were significantly lacking. It seemed as though both sides were evenly matched, yet the Dragon Clan hadn't even transformed. 4 against 2, and still without a chance of victory against the Dragon Clan. Boom! A deafening roar cleared the dust and smoke. Both sides separated, once again facing off against each other. The silver-haired girl's expression turned even grimmer as she said coldly, "I didn't expect you to have some skills, but you won't be walking out of here today, Ashbourne, kill them." The middle-aged Dragon Clan man nodded, "As you wish, Ms. Beata." Having said that, his body began to inflate rapidly, bursting his brocade clothes and revealing scaled skin, as he transformed into a gigantic, fierce dragon form. The massive dragon occupied most of the hall. Fang Hao narrowed his eyes slightly. He gestured to the others beside him, and planted the Thunder God's blade into the ground. Whoosh! Mist wrap burst forth, the fog filled with lightning serpents instantly clouding the entire hall, cutting off everyone's line of sight. Humph, scared now? The silver-haired girl glanced at the dragon next to her and said, "Disperse the fog and just kill them." The gigantic dragon nodded slightly, flapping its wings with force. A majestic gust of wind howled forth, instantly scattering the fog in the arena, revealing the mutilated hall. As the fog cleared, the silver-haired girl concentrated on her thunderbolt spear, and the dragon prepared its dragon breath. But in front of them, there was no one to be found, no trace of those 4. Both were startled. Could it be that they used a teleportation scroll so quickly? "Ms. Beata, they've run away," the dragon spoke human words. "Damn it!" The silver-haired girl's complexion turned even colder. Halfway through the fight, just as she was about to unleash a powerful move, the others had left. It felt as though she had been toyed with. Tap tap tap. From afar, a large number of footsteps could be heard. Along with it came a roar as loud as thunder, "Who dares cause trouble in the Alliance, seeking death?" The guards of the Alliance had arrived. The dragon's form quickly shrank, returning to a human shape. The original brocade robes were torn, and now he was adorned with a golden armor. "Ms. Beata, today is the auction, and the captain guarding the trade alliance should be of dark gold level. Let's retreat for now," the middle-aged man whispered. Chapter 887. Beata's chest heaved dramatically as she coldly glanced at the spot where those people had vanished. In a cool voice, she said, "Let's head back first." Having said that, she took out a scroll. The middle-aged man immediately leaped aside and picked up the injured Aragon, moving closer to the girl again. The girl fully unfolded the scroll, and a golden array swiftly took shape. The figures of the 3 disappeared from the spot. A large number of personnel rushed into the hall, now resembling ruins. Well-equipped guards, as well as a countless number of Valkyrie constructs. The guards enclosed the scene, but no one was in sight anymore. At that moment, an exceptionally handsome elf slowly walked out from among the guards. Silver-white long hair, delicate facial features. At first glance, it was hard to tell if the individual was male or female. Forest Guardian Tyrion, dark gold 3rd-tier hero. A dark gold level hero. Behind this person followed individuals of various races, many of whom were heroes of orange level. This magnificent assembly would have made it truly difficult for the parties involved in the recent skirmish to leave had they not already done so. Tyrion's icy gaze swept over the ruins, with a dark expression on his face. It had taken less than 10 minutes to arrive here after receiving the notification. The scene had already turned into what it was now. A guard ran over and reported, "My lord, people from both sides used teleportation to leave." "Humph. Daring to cause trouble in the trade alliance, they've got some nerve," Tyrion said, hands clasped behind his back, and continued, "Disperse the crowd, get the auctions person in charge to bring information about the two fighting parties, and go to the main hall." "Yes, my lord." The guards quickly dispersed to clean up the mess. Waity, somewhat dumbfounded, looked at the ruins before him. He had only met 3 transmigrators here, and 2 of them had just torn apart the auction house. That transmigrator, who is he that he actually fought with the dragon clan? A transmigrator woman asked at that moment. Waity opened his mouth to say Fule, but the next second, he said, "I don't know him." The battlefield was quite evident. The highly touted Aragon had lain lifeless throughout the entire ordeal, presenting as critically injured upon emerging from the elevator. Whereas the Fule, who seemed to understand nothing and even needed some knowledge to be imparted by others, had fought with the dragon clan for several rounds. What exactly is going on? Under the guards' ushering, the dazed crowd was dispersed. Waity and the woman, along with their respective races, left the scene. Trade Alliance, the main guarding hall. A group of people sat grim-faced around a long table. The auction hall being smashed up at the end of the spring auction was a very serious matter for the Trade Alliance. It hadn't happened in over 100 years. At the head of the table sat an old goblin with black-framed glasses. After listening to everyone's reports, he spoke, "Are you saying that it was the Dragon Clan causing trouble again this time?" Guard Commander Tyrion immediately replied, "Yes, it was Beata from the Dragon Clan, and the other was a transmigrator's power, from Residence 032. The leading goblin didn't say anything. But the rest had already started discussing among themselves. In the discussions, one could hear comments on how the Dragon Clan had gone too far and caused trouble again. Clearly, fighting at the Trade Alliance headquarters was not the first occurrence for the Dragon Clan. After some time, the leading goblin continued to ask, "Tyrion, as the commander in charge of the garrison this time, what are your thoughts?" Tyrion thought for a moment, then spoke softly, "Since the Dragon Clan is powerful, we should still opt for a conciliatory approach in resolving this. As for the transmigrator, I believe we can be firmer, at the very least the cost for repairing the entire hall should be borne by someone." The leading goblin nodded, "I'll leave it to you to handle this, Tyrion." "Understood." Chapter 888. Main City. The 4 emerged from the teleportation glow, all somewhat disheveled. When they had left, they were dressed in brocade and embroidered clothes, which were now stained with some blood and scars. "Master, Angia, what happened to you?" Ira, with a maid in tow, asked anxiously. Fang Hao shook his head. "It's nothing, go and have Dujin shut down the Trade Alliance teleportation array, and without my permission, no one is to teleport here." "Yes, master," a maid hurried out. Fang Hao continued, "Dimitrija, put the whole city on defense mode, kill any strangers who enter the perimeter on sight." "Yes, my lord." "Angia, go notify Aceti and Meat Fist that there will be a meeting at the Lord's mansion in half an hour." "And you?" Angia asked. "After this matter, the Trade Alliance will certainly investigate, who is right and who is wrong is hard to clarify. I'm going to call back the heroes from outside to prevent the Trade Alliance from underestimating us," Fang Hao stated. "Oh, shall I accompany you?" Angia asked, somewhat uneasy. Fang Hao smiled, "No worries, there's no danger. You go treat your wounds first, then do as I instructed." "Okay." Everyone dispersed according to their assigned tasks. Fang Hao released the teleportation glow once more, disappearing from the spot. Within Blood Castle, Fang Hao had just appeared when footsteps echoed from a corridor on one side. With a tall figure dressed in black stockings, Rolina and another in golden armor adorned with a lavish mask, Amanda, came walking in back and forth. "You really treat this place like your own home, eh? Coming and going as you." Rolina began to sneer, but on seeing Fang Hao's disheveled appearance, she forgot the rest of her sentence. Instead, she asked somewhat surprised, "What happened to you?" Amanda also turned her attention to Fang Hao. With the current strength of the territory, Fang Hao, as a lord, should not have been so disheveled. Especially since no news had come through about any war breaking out. Fang Hao dusted off the dust on his clothes and said, "Don't ask, wasn't it the Trade Alliance's auction today? I planned to see if I could buy some useful items for everyone, but I encountered people from the Dragon Clan. They attacked me without a word. After a brief fight, I used teleportation to return first." After hearing his brief explanation, the two understood the situation. "I heard the people of the Dragon Clan are greedy and domineering. Were they eyeing something you bought?" Amanda asked curiously. Fang Hao explained, "It seems they have some method, they knew I had taken the Demon Dragon Potion." The two fell silent. This kind of matter isn't so easy to judge. The Dragon Clan is protective. Protecting their clan members is, in a sense, a responsibility of the race. But sometimes the Dragon Clan's protection can be unreasonably overzealous. Greedy, some of the Dragon Clan have attempted looting and got injured in retaliation. In such cases, the Dragon Clan still shelters and favors their own kind, even irrationally seeking revenge. Fang Hao's situation was tricky to assess. Firstly, he had indeed killed people from the Dragon Clan, or rather, a prestigious Dragon Clan hero, and had turned their bodies into living dead and undead. Secondly, it happened in the Trade Alliance's territory, which complicates matters with the alliance. In short, the situation was relatively complex. "Then, my lord, what do you suggest?" Amanda continued to inquire. Fang Hao said, "The Dragon Clan's retaliation won't come immediately, but the Trade Alliance will likely pursue this matter soon. I've come to fetch both of you so we can hear out the Trade Alliance's stance and make sure they don't take us lightly. The territory's two dark gold heroes. All in Blood Castle, so these two women, being the territory's strongest face, others might not go, but they must. Why do we have to go over this mess you started?" Rollina raised her leg, giving Fang Hao a disdainful glance. Fang Hao was prepared for Rollina's attitude. He said softly, "Lately, I acquired a few goblin aerial ships, quite excellent as vehicles and quite lovely once decorated, thinking of allocating a few to heroes who have contributed to the territory. The selections haven't been decided yet." Rollina's eyes slightly lit up, bringing her long leg down, cough. "Let's go, the sooner we leave, the sooner we return." Amanda didn't say much, simply stood up. Fang Hao released the teleportation glow and departed with the two women. Afterward, he went to other territories, fetching a few more orange tier heroes. 7 p.m. Inside the Lord's Hall. Fang Hao sat at the head of the table. Below him was a gathering of heroes he had fetched this time. To his left sat Dark Gold Tier 5 Rollina, Orange Tier 8 Dimitrija, Orange Tier 7 Aceti, and Blue Tier 9 Angia. To his right was Dark Gold Tier 6 Amanda, Orange Tier 7 Nelson, Orange Tier 3 Meatfist, along with two later made Orange Tier Dwarf heroes. The living and undead, each sat on opposite sides. As for Purple Tier Belarga, Dark Elf Morse, Dragon Clan's Living Dead Spencer, and some other heroes, Fang Hao did not call them over. Morse and Spencer, appearing in front of outsiders would be like inviting trouble. And heroes like Bronze Bull and Belarga, being stationed in their respective areas, were also not convenient to come over. But this was enough. The lineup before him was already in no way inferior to any top power. Proving their strength, without directly engaging in battle, was sufficient. Today's incident at the Trade Alliance unfolded as such. By tomorrow the people from the Alliance will likely come calling us to account. When the time comes, everyone just needs to step forward, Fang Hao said with a smile. The gathered heroes nodded slightly, indicating their understanding. Chapter 889. As soon as the words were spoken, the skeleton merchant Dujin walked in, bowed, and said, "My lord, the Trade Alliance has sent a teleportation request. Should we allow them to come over?" Mr. Fang Hao was taken aback. That was fast. They were coming over directly in the middle of the night, they really took this matter seriously. "Bring them over then." "Yes, my lord." Dujin quickly left and, upon reaching the Trade Alliance building, approved the teleportation request. The very next second, three figures emerged from the Trade Alliance's teleportation screen. One tall and two short. The tall one was Forest Guardian Tyrion, a dark gold third-tier hero, and the other two were goblins. One was a staff member accompanying the 01 number station who would report today's observations truthfully to the station. The other was the person in charge of the 032 number station Kukator. He was there to guide and accompany them. The three figures had just appeared. Cricketer, closely following the long strides of the elf clan member, explained, Mr. Fang Hao is an important client of the Trade Alliance. Last year, his total revenue within just a few months has already ranked first in the entire region. There must be some misunderstanding here, Lord Tyrion must investigate thoroughly. Now, Mr. Fang Hao was the god of wealth for the entire 032 number station. The trade volume in a few months was enough for the rest of the races for an entire year. Cricketer naturally did not want the relationship between Mr. Fang Hao and the Trade Alliance headquarters to deteriorate. What could it matter if they destroyed the auction house? They could just rebuild. Losing this god of wealth would mean that the 032 number station would rank at the bottom again. Their personal incomes would also be affected. Humph. Utilizing force in the Trade Alliance headquarters, abusing magic, and tearing down the entire auction, what misunderstanding could there be? It's simply a disregard for the rules of the Trade Alliance. The elegant elf was very angry. Today's incident had a great impact on him as well, he might lose this leisurely and well-paying job. So, the person who caused the trouble must pay the price. He couldn't pursue the Dragon Clan, but couldn't he deal with this little transmigrator? You can't talk like that. What if the Dragon Clan started it and Mr. Fang Hao was acting in self-defense? Cricketer, running alongside them, continued to speak. Humph. The Trade Alliance headquarters will find out the truth. Right now, our job is to bring this person back for interrogation, said Tyrion. Cricketer had nothing to say in response, he was just a guide. The decision-making power was still in the hands of Tyrion. He could only run along behind them. Endujan, leading the way, was also just silently guiding. Without uttering a word, the group moved forward. Soon, they passed through numerous buildings and arrived at the entrance of the Lord's Manor. Seeing that the lights inside the Lord's Manor were bright, Tyrion pushed aside the undead blocking the way and walked straight into the manor. He said coldly, "What a grand display, I, as your commander, have come here, and yet you, a transmigrator, dare to wait for me to come see you." However, upon stepping into the building, seeing the heroes seated all around, Tyrion's face changed instantly. His earlier arrogance, rage, and questioning emotions suddenly turned into perplexity, doubt, and disbelief. What is this situation? So many heroes? In the hall, Mr. Fang Hao sat at the head, his brows furrowed as he looked down at the heroes below. Forest Guardian Tyrion, Dark Gold 3rd tier hero. Dark Gold 3rd tier, just as he had guessed. The hero stationed by the Trade Alliance headquarters had reached the level of Dark Gold. But, the Trade Alliance had also underestimated him, thinking that sending just one Dark Gold over would be enough to capture him. The conversation they had outside was not quiet either. Mr. Fang Hao had heard the content as well. Having Rolina and the others come over was a necessity. Seeing the elf and two goblins standing dumbfounded in the hall, Mr. Fang Hao revealed a smile. He said softly, "What's the matter? You came without an invitation, and you still expect me to personally welcome you." Tyrion's expression became serious, and he quickly recovered, scoffing, "You caused a commotion in the Trade Alliance, and I am the commander on duty that day. How is it? Don't you feel any sense of responsibility?" "What responsibility?" "Not following the Trade Alliance's rules, damaging the Trade Alliance's property, causing harm and impact, you tell me what responsibility?" Tyrion said loudly, not yielding an inch. Tyrion had initially planned to use force to subdue Mr. Fang Hao upon entering and then take him back to the Trade Alliance. To coerce him into taking responsibility for the main losses, then negotiate with the Dragon Clan, and the matter would be over. But now, it was different. The atmosphere of the heroes in the hall was very strong, with several of them exuding an aura not weaker than his. Forcefully taking him away was obviously not possible. If they started a fight, he himself might end up staying here permanently. Fortunately, reason was still on his side, the rules of the Trade Alliance were clear, and the transmigrator in front of him had caused loss and negative impact, which was undeniable. Hearing the elf's questioning, Mr. Fang Hao simply laughed, "It seems you came to me first without visiting the Dragon Clan. What difference does it make? If you had gone to the Dragon Clan, you would know they were the first to strike," said Mr. Fang Hao. "Even without surveillance. As long as the Dragon Clan stated they found Mr. Fang Hao consuming dragon blood as the reason, it would confirm who initiated the conflict. Drinking dragon blood. It's a personal grudge between the Dragon Clan and Mr. Fang Hao, but the Trade Alliance would not intervene, they only require that fighting is not permitted. Otherwise, there would be many opposing races present, and the reasons do not matter. Those who strike first bear a more severe responsibility in the allocation of blame. Chapter 890. Tyrion's expression remained unchanged as he continued, as for the Dragon Clan, naturally representatives from the Trade Alliance will be sent. When the time comes, it won't just be up to you to decide the responsibility. Ha, sure, you guys go discuss it. When you decide on how to deal with it, just let me know, Fang Hao said. Tyrion's eyes narrowed slightly. Need to inform you? Come with us. When we get to the Trade Alliance, you can explain your issues there. The Trade Alliance is a neutral power. I accept mediation, but I do not accept your interrogation. You, a transmigrator, should not be so arrogant. Tyrion burst out, pointing at Fang Hao and scolding loudly. Fang Hao sneered, what? You want to die here? Let's see if the elves have the ability to avenge you, or if the Trade Alliance will avenge you. In the next instant, the two rows of heroes around them stood up instantly. Tyrion's face changed, and he subconsciously took 2 steps back, his body tensed. His anger turned into fear. In the instant when everyone stood up, he really thought they were about to start a fight. Tyrion's face looked terrible. This transmigrator was completely different from the ones he had encountered before, surrounded by so many heroes. And his aura was not the slightest bit inferior. He believed that if the situation continued to deteriorate, this transmigrator would indeed dare to have him killed. Both parties were no longer speaking, the atmosphere had become tense. At this moment, Goblin Cricketer, the person in charge of station number 032, tried to mediate. Let's all calm down a bit. It's nothing more than damage done to some buildings and equipment, not a big deal. These kinds of incidents have happened in previous years as well and have been resolved amicably. He was a responsible person of the Trade Alliance, but his thoughts were aligned with Fang Hao's side. At any cost, they could not let Fang Hao and the Trade Alliance fall out. The problem could be major or minor, and what made this different from the past was that it happened at the auction. They even demolished the important building of the auction hall. But it didn't matter. It was just a matter of compensation. Taking away the leader of a power was indeed a bit of bullying. Hearing Cricketer's words, Fang Hao also suppressed the anger in his heart. He still needed to cooperate with the Trade Alliance, especially for the materials needed for the wishing well and several blueprints he required. He couldn't really abandon the Trade Alliance. Mr. Cricketer, due to the unexpected incident this time, we have indeed caused some trouble for the Trade Alliance. We accept the Trade Alliance's inquiry, as well as subsequent cooperation, but it must be fair, and not biased due to issues of strength. Fang Hao thought for a bit and then spoke softly. Cricketer nodded and said, Mr. Fang Hao is an important partner and ally of the Trade Alliance. The Trade Alliance will ensure the interests and safety of its allies. I will communicate this matter to the headquarters and will follow up on the subsequent handling. Good, Mr. Cricketer is indeed mature and fair in his handling of matters. Cricketer nodded again, bypassed Tyrion, and began to inquire with Fang Hao about what had happened. Fang Hao recounted the events from start to finish. From the encounter in the elevator, to the sudden move by the silver-haired girl, and finally not having the upper hand and taking his people to retreat first. He detailed everything meticulously. Cricketer took notes of everything, and then said, All right, Mr. Fang Hao, I will explain this incident to the headquarters. If there is any news later, I will arrange for someone to inform you. That would be good. Then I won't disturb you any further. After speaking, Cricketer turned around and left directly. Tyrion, who had been left standing there the whole time, watched the departing goblin. He also quickly followed with another person. They returned to the Trade Alliance via the teleportation array. Inside the hall, Rowlena was swinging her well-shaped legs. Why not just kill him? A dark gold hero could have been turned into a skeleton to increase the strength of your territory. Now is not the time to break with the Trade Alliance, otherwise I wouldn't have let them use the teleportation array, Fang Hao explained. Aren't you afraid he'll go back and fabricate stories to make enemies for you? He won't, with Cricketer there, he will vouch for our words, Fang Hao continued. All right, it's over. Everyone, go back and rest. Hey! What about the aerial ship you mentioned? Rowlena asked immediately. She hadn't forgotten about the aerial ship. Cough. Fang Hao said, it's outside the city. I'll take you to see it. He took a few people to the place outside the city where the aerial ship was parked. All over the ground were parts of aerial ships. And 101 huge aerial ships floating in the air. Rollina looked up, her eyes wide with amazement. Goblin aerial ships were somewhat famous, but she had never seen one before. Pick one. It will be yours from now on. The beauty of the lonely night, Lorana and Tobias's loyalty towards you has increased, current loyalty is 80.